Chapter 512. A cruel bloody battle. Qin Yun was somewhat surprised that the Lu family would appear here. This was because the Yang family hated him even more and definitely wanted his Dao artifact. If the Yang family wanted to make a move, it would not be the Lu family's turn to intercept them. The Lu family would definitely not dare to snatch it from the Yang family. Qin Yun, are you in such a hurry to save Tian Ruling? A relatively older-looking youth said with a contemptuous smile. It's good that you know. Then hurry up and get out of the way. I don't want to waste time with you here. As Qin Yun spoke, he patted the dust off his body. He had been knocked to the ground by a martial master of the spirit martial realm, but he had only dirted his body. He had not suffered any losses. This was also because he had a Dao artifact armor on him. When the martial master saw that Qin Yun was not injured, his eyes became even more fervent. Of course, the Lu family had Dao artifacts, but not many. And of course, the more of these things, the better. Everyone wanted them. You should be grateful that we are waiting for you here because Tian Ruling is already dead. The young man laughed. If you rush back, you won't even be able to see her corpse. When Qin Yun heard this, he was immediately infuriated. Is what you said true? Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, there are people from the Yang, Tian and Long families outside the city. Do you think that Tian Ruling still has any hope of survival? The youth from the Lu family took out a long sword. His face was filled with excitement because if Qin Yun was intercepted by them, he would definitely die. The Dao artifact on Qin Yun's body was also theirs. I have to say that wild woman Tian Ruling still has some ability. She can actually suppress Long Yanwei. Therefore, the people from the Yang family are waiting for Long Yanwei to be defeated and then fight with Tian Ruling. Otherwise, we wouldn't be waiting for you here. Qin Yun, obediently hand over your Dao artifact. This is good for everyone. As long as you hand over the Dao artifact, we won't kill you. We will only cripple your hands and feet. The people from the Lu family laughed arrogantly and proudly. Qin Yun took out a Dao saber and gripped the hilt tightly. He was wearing a Dao armor and holding a Dao saber in his hand. This caused the 4 members of the Lu family to be extremely envious. The Dao patterns on the great Dao in Qin Yun's hand flowed with strands of golden energy under the sunlight. It was filled with Dao charms. It was obvious at a glance that it was a Dao artifact. How many branches does your Lu family have? Qin Yun took out a piece of cloth, wiped the saber, and calmly asked. Why are you asking this? The old martial master sneered. In the 5 great prefectures of the Spirit Desolate, the Lu family has 13 branches. There were 3 in the Proud Star State. The Lu family that we are from is also the strongest in the Proud Star State. You're trying to kill me and stop me from saving my friend. The enmity between me and your Lu family is thoroughly sowed. Qin Yun put away the cloth and looked at the extremely sharp blade. The old martial master threw his head back and laughed. You are a weakling. You are not worthy of becoming enemies with our Lu family. You don't even have the qualifications for our Lu family to issue an arrest warrant. As the old man laughed, he suddenly saw a flash of cold light. It was an arc of light that appeared when the blade was swung. The body of the youth closest to Qin Yun immediately split into 3 pieces. The old man could no longer laugh. As for Qin Yun, it looked like he was only holding the saber. The blade was dripping with blood. Out of the 3 youths, one of them had suddenly died. From the beginning to the end, the martial master and the 2 youths did not see how Qin Yun had attacked. This was because it was simply too fast. Qin Yun had practiced his saber technique the entire night. The saber he had slashed out was also the most ordinary move. It was also very simple, and did not emit a strong aura. This was the charm of the common saber technique. Earlier, Qin Yun had only held his saber tightly. The saber moved according to his heart. Subconsciously, he had used the most perfect saber move to kill that youth. What about now? Will your Lu family put me on the wanted list? After Qin Yun finished speaking, he wielded his saber with both hands and slashed rapidly, creating a gentle breeze. A terrifying saber aura, like a transparent sharp blade, landed on the two youths. Poochie! The two youths were instantly sliced into several pieces by the incomparably sharp Tao force. Qin Yun only stood on the spot without moving. Through the saber in his hand, he condensed a powerful Tao energy to attack. The old man only felt that Qin Yun's hands were suddenly dancing. It was filled with afterimages, and he could not see what saber technique it was. You? Go to hell. The old man was also frightened. However, when he remembered that he was a martial master, he boldly held a long sword and charged forward. When Qin Yun saw the other party's sword thrusting at him, he slashed with his saber and cut the sword in half. After the old man's sword was cut in half, his body was also slashed by the saber. A bloody mark appeared on the armor on his chest, and blood flowed out. You have just stepped into the spirit martial realm, a trash martial master. As Qin Yun spoke, he slashed down again. In his panic, the old man used his fastest movement technique to dodge Qin Yun's saber. He instantly ran 2,000 to 3,000 meters away and shot out 3 Xian-level thunder talismans. Boom! Boom! Countless bolts of lightning engulfed Qin Yun. It had to be said that this old man from the Lu family was extremely cunning. He did not attack Qin Yun. Instead, he turned around and ran. Earlier, when he and Qin Yun clashed, he could feel a terrifying Tao energy in Qin Yun's body. Although that Tao energy was inferior to the spirit martial realm, Qin Yun had a Tao artifact. A martial master who had just entered the spirit martial realm could only die when facing Qin Yun. This bastard, he actually threw out 3 Xian thunder talismans at once. Qin Yun struggled free from the lightning and hurriedly chased after the old man from the Lu family. The direction the old man from the Lu family was fleeing towards was the city gate of Saber Sword City. Tian Ruling was dressed in black and was stained with blood, but it was not obvious. There was her blood and also the blood of the enemy. Her beautiful wheat-colored face was filled with coldness. There was a look of determination between her brows, making her look somewhat heroic. However, it could be seen that she was extremely haggard. There was a deep wound on her shoulder. It was caused by a sharp object. Tian Ruling, your strength is not bad. You were actually able to defeat the disciples of the 5 great star sects. A short-haired man from the Yang family had a complacent smile on his face. Long Yanwei had indeed been defeated by Tian Ruling, but the injuries on her body were much heavier than Long Yanwei's. Long Yanwei was afraid of death, so he admitted defeat ahead of time. If that bastard hadn't used a concealed weapon, I wouldn't have been so heavily injured. Long Ruling's entire body was covered in shocking injuries, but she did not even frown. Like a majestic warrior, she stood there, facing the genius disciple of the Yang family. Long Yanwei shouted from afar, "Slut, don't speak nonsense. I didn't use any concealed weapons at all. It was only because you were so heavily injured that I didn't want to continue fighting with you. I let you win, but you actually dared to bite me back. Truly vicious." Yu Wulan, who was standing inside the city gate, sneered when she heard this. Long Yanwei, do you believe such words yourself? As long as you defeat Tian Ruling, you can obtain the Tao artifact. A bastard like you would be willing to give up on a precious Tao artifact? There were many people watching, and they did not believe Long Yanwei's words. Tian Ruling, if you obediently hand over the Tao artifact, our Yang family will no longer pursue the matter of you forcing Yang Mutian to kneel. When the red-clothed youth from the Yang family mentioned the Tao artifact, his body trembled slightly. The people from the Tian family were also here, but they did not dare to make a sound. Tian Ruling's position in the Tian family was not high. Now that she had offended the Long and Yang families, naturally no one came out to protect her. The Tian family also wanted to obtain the Tao artifact in Tian ruling's hands, but with the Long and Yang families in front of them, the Tian family did not dare to compete with them. Yang Haiping, you've been on Star Mountain Island for 3 years, and you're still at the 9th level of the martial Tao. Tian ruling licked the blood off her face and smiled coldly. Her appearance was filled with a bloody wildness. Yu Wulan also felt sorry for Tian ruling, but if she were to make a move, the martial masters of the Yang family would also stop her. The Long, Yang and Tian families all had martial masters of the spirit realm here. They only allowed the younger generation to make a move and at the same time, ensured that they would not be disturbed during the battle. Yang Haiping was infuriated by Tian ruling's ridicule. Tian ruling, your death is here. You insulted our Yang family's disciple, Yang Mutian, and forced him to kneel. This is equivalent to forcing all of our Yang family's disciples to kneel. Today, I will take your lowly life and save my Yang family's face. What a joke! It's obvious that this trash, Yang Mutian, lost the bet, but he refuses to fulfill his promise. Tian ruling laughed coldly. Your Yang family's disciples are indeed all bastards. The words you say are all the same. Take her down and force her to hand over her Tao artifact as compensation. An old man from the Yang family shouted. The furious Yang Haiping flew over and punched out. His Tao energy surged out like a huge wave. Although Tian ruling was covered in injuries, her reaction was not slow at all. She quickly jumped up and dodged the surging Tao energy. Get down here! Yang Haiping shouted angrily and suddenly formed a purplish-gold rock. His martial spirit was the purple-gold rock martial spirit. The rock was formed from Tao energy. Like a powerful rank 9 spirit beast, it flew over with a cry and used its 10-meter-long purplish-gold wings to slap down on Tian ruling. Tian ruling spat out a mouthful of blood. Her palm was filled with cold energy as she shot out an ice-cold Tao energy, freezing the rock's huge wings. Gale Ice Thorn. Hua hua hua. Suddenly, a biting cold primordial Tao energy condensed into many ice thorns that were a few meters long. They fell down like rain and enveloped the rock's body. The rock immediately struggled and cried out. Its body was pierced with many large holes before it gradually dissipated. The martial spirit image that he released was scattered, and Yang Haiping also suffered a certain amount of damage. His head hurt and his eyes became dizzy. Tian ruling was also forced to her limit as she suddenly fell from the sky. Her body landed heavily on the ground, and then she got up with great difficulty. Ha ha! I've won for sure. Yang Haiping walked over and kicked Tian ruling with great force, sending her flying. Rolling! Yu Wulan shouted and rushed out. Wulan, don't get involved. Suddenly, an old woman appeared and stopped Yu Wulan. She was a martial master from the Yu clan. Auntie Lu, let me go. Yu Wulan looked at Tian ruling, who was constantly being kicked, her beautiful eyes filled with tears. Tian ruling was constantly being beaten up. Yang Haiping laughed maniacally with pride as he continuously kicked the injured Tian ruling. Suddenly, Qin Yun's figure appeared in the distant sky. Qin Yun had caught up to the martial master from the Lu family. They were only about 2,000 meters away from the city gate. Qin Yun wants to kill me, quickly save me! The Lu family's martial master shouted. Just as he finished speaking, his head was chopped off by Qin Yun. When Qin Yun saw Tian ruling being beaten up, the heavenly lion blood in his body immediately boiled. In his anger, he kicked the Lu family elder's head towards Yang Haiping. Chapter 513. Saber Hall Master. The head that rolled down had an old, malevolent face filled with fear. Someone recognized the head of the Lu family martial master. Qin Yun killed a martial master from the Lu family. There was a commotion in the crowd. Yang Haiping looked at the distant Qin Yun and felt infuriated. His face was covered in blood. Qin Yun, get over here! Just as Yang Haiping's angry voice fell, a black shadow suddenly flashed over. Qin Yun arrived, his speed was as fast as lightning. Pa! A crisp sound rang out, and Yang Haipeng was also sent tumbling in the air. Qin Yun suddenly went over and sent Yang Haipeng flying with a slap. Impudent! The Yang family's martial master was furious and quickly flew over. Qin Yun gripped his Dao artifact saber tightly and slashed at the martial master who was flying over. The black blade Qi jumped out randomly, like a dancing electric current, leaping towards the Yang family's martial master. The Yang family's martial master felt the terrifying saber Qi and quickly dodged. However, his face was still cut by the saber Qi. This Yang family martial master had stepped into the spirit martial realm in his middle age. His strength was definitely not weak. But now, Qin Yun's Dao artifact had turned it into a big tabby cat. Qin Yun hurriedly picked up Tian Ruling, who was lying on the ground. However, the Tian family, Long family and Yang family, a total of 8 middle-aged and old martial masters surrounded Qin Yun. Qin Yun, don't even think about running. The martial master of the Yang clan, whose face was covered in blood, shouted angrily. They did not dare to get too close to Qin Yun. The head of the martial master from the Lu family was still on the ground. His eyes were wide open as he died with a grievance. Qin Yun relied on a Dao artifact to kill a spirit martial realm martial master at the 9th level of the martial Dao. This caused many of the martial artists present to be shocked. Ruling, take out your Dao tool. Qin Yun looked at the people surrounding him. He said slowly. Tian Ruling took out the Dao artifact saber that Qin Yun had given her. After receiving it, Qin Yun threw it into the distance with great force. Don't you want a Dao artifact? Go and snatch it. As he spoke, he threw out a second Dao artifact. In the blink of an eye, it flew into the distance. The 8 spirit martial realm martial masters who had surrounded Qin Yun were surprised. They also flew out and chased after the 2 flying Dao tools. Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. Qin Yun actually handed over the 2 Dao artifacts so easily. Ruling, you're really stupid. Don't you know how to return to the city and hide? Qin Yun took out a light inscription talisman and placed it on Tian Ruling's chest. He sighed with a pained heart. I'm worried that they will chase after you. Tian Ruling felt a lot more at ease when she saw Qin Yun return. Qin Yun carried Tian Ruling and ran towards the city gate. However, Yang Haipeng, who had just been slapped, stood in front of Qin Yun. Qin Yun, you have a Dao artifact armor on you, right? Yang Haipeng said coldly. Hand over the Dao artifact armor and I'll write off the slap you gave me. Qin Yun carried Tian Ruling on his back and suddenly charged at Yang Haipeng. He activated the dragon-resisting boots on his feet with all his might and his speed reached its peak. When Yang Haipeng saw Qin Yun charging at him, he was alarmed and wanted to dodge. Pa! Another crisp sound rang out. Yang Haipeng did not have time to dodge. He only felt a burning pain on the other side of his face and a buzzing sound in his ears. He was sent flying once again and landed heavily on the ground. Trash like you is not worthy of a Dao artifact. Qin Yun's voice was filled with contempt. With these 2 sentences, he appeared above Yang Haipeng and then suddenly descended. Wearing the dragon-resisting boots, he vigorously stomped on Yang Haipeng's abdomen. Yang Haipeng screamed miserably as blood spurted out of his mouth like a fountain, accompanying his screams. Yang Haipeng was a disciple of the 5 great star sects, Star Mountain Island. However, he had been abused so miserably by Qin Yun. Disciples of the 5 great star sects? What a bunch of trash! Qin Yun kicked Yang Haipeng and sent him flying in front of Long Yanwei. He looked at Long Yanwei and said coldly, when you see Lu Chongxing, let him seize the opportunity to enjoy his life. He cheated me of 100 million purple coins. He will use his life to pay for it. Long Yanwei, you are a disciple of the Wood Star Palace, right? Go back and tell the people of the Wood Star Palace that one day, I, Qin Yun, will flatten the wood star palace. Qin Yun's cold words, filled with might, permeated the air filled with killing intent, causing everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Qin Yun carried Tian rolling on his back as he walked through the city gate and handed it over to Yu Wulan. He waved his hand towards the sky outside the city, and the 2 Dao artifacts flew back with a whoosh. The group of martial masters at the spirit martial realm also hurriedly chased after them. In order to obtain a Dao artifact, you guys are acting like dogs. If you guys bark like a dog, I can really give you the Dao artifact. Qin Yun kept the Dao artifact that flew back and sneered at the group of martial masters. Qin Yun, who was at the 9th level of the martial Dao, had an extremely powerful mental strength. He could use the Imperial Spirit technique and control objects to fly far away. Those few martial masters were indeed treated like dogs by him, as if they were dogs that were trying to snatch bones. The martial masters from the few great families were immediately angered to the point that their faces turned green. When everyone saw their expressions, they all snickered in their hearts. Qin Yun, you can be considered a character, but you won't be able to live for long. The middle-aged martial master from the Long family roared furiously and charged into the city gate. The ferocious aura of the spirit martial realm swept up a storm, causing a violent gale to blow within the city. Qin Yun, I'll cripple you. The Long family's martial master raised his palm and struck at Qin Yun's head. At the same time, the martial masters of the Yang and Tian families also rushed into the city gates and punched at Qin Yun. Scram! From afar, a dull shout suddenly came. With a flash of cold light, a long saber flew over and stabbed into the Long family's martial master's palm. After the martial master's hand was stabbed, he screamed miserably and was sent flying by the powerful saber. Qin Yun's body was also hit by the chaotic punches. Ah! He roared angrily and slashed out with his saber. With a swoosh, saber energy shot out. A few martial masters were unable to dodge in time. Deep saber wounds appeared on their bodies as blood flowed out. The Dao artifact saber was too overbearing. A martial master at the spirit martial realm could not withstand it at all. The city gate was in chaos and a chaotic battle was about to break out. However, it quickly stopped, because a black-clothed middle-aged man had appeared here. The black-clothed middle-aged man's eyes were as sharp as knives. They were slightly sunken and his expression was cold. A powerful aura surged out from his body, causing him to be filled with might. On that square face, there were some black inscriptions engraved on it, adding a lot of might to his aura. The black-clothed middle-aged man's eyes widened as he looked at the Long family's martial master. Then, he withdrew his saber. It was him who had released a saber and pierced through the Long family's martial master's palm. It was also him who had forced those martial masters back. Who are you? The Long family's martial master looked at his bleeding hand and roared angrily. Saber Sword Villa, Saber Hall Master Xiong Dao. Xiong Dao raised his head slightly and looked at the few martial masters. He slowly said, "Stretch out your hands. I want to stab your palms with a knife." The surrounding crowd was in an uproar. What right do you have? Do you want to offend our 3 great families? The Yang family's martial master said disdainfully. Just as he finished speaking, everyone heard a pause sound. Xiong Dao had actually used his blade to slap the Yang family's martial master. Just because I can kill you. Xiong Dao's face darkened as he waved the saber in his hand again. With a shwa sound, the Yang family's martial master's arm was cut off from the shoulder. The speed at which Xiong Dao struck was as fast as lightning. The saber style was very ordinary and not gorgeous at all. It was just a casual slash, but it was hard to block. With a few swishes, he quickly chopped off the arms of the martial masters like he was chopping firewood. This is the result of hitting people in Saber Sword City. Xiong Dao's cold words were filled with contempt. You so-called powerful clans are actually all such trash. No wonder you are so eager to enter the 5 great star sects and the immortal sects. Everyone sucked in a deep breath of cold air. This Xiong Dao was the hall master of the Saber Hall. Chopping off the arms of these people meant that they would become enemies with 3 of the 5 great clans. The martial master who had his arm chopped off was furious to the extreme. However, he was also afraid of Xiong Dao's strength and hurriedly retreated from the city gate. They knew very well that if they continued to stay, there was a high chance that they would be killed. Qin Yun never expected that the hall master of their saber hall would be such a person. At this moment, Tian Ruling was completely relieved. The group of martial masters did not leave. Instead, they stood outside the city gate and looked angrily at Xiong Dao and Qin Yun. Qin Yun, you coward, just you wait. Right now, only Long Yanwei looked more spirited, so of course he had to say some ruthless words. Otherwise, their Long family would be completely looked down upon. You said I'm a coward? Could it be that you want to provoke me into a fight with you? Qin Yun found it funny as he walked out of the city. He was not afraid of Long Yanwei at all. Those at the spirit realm who had their arms cut off did not dare to move. When I fought with Tian Ruling earlier, I suffered serious injuries. Otherwise, I would definitely fight with you and kill a bastard like you. Long Yanwei snorted. Qin Yun, Saber Hall, our Long family will not let this matter rest. Just you wait. The martial masters of the Long family looked at the severed arms in the distance and did not dare to retrieve them. If your Long family has the guts, then come. I, Xiong Dao, will accompany you at any time. Xiong Dao waved his hand and sent the severed arms flying. They picked up the severed arms and were about to leave when they heard Qin Yun shout, "Wait! Long Yanwei, did you use a concealed weapon in your battle with Tian Ruling?" Qin Yun asked coldly. No such thing. Of course, Long Yanwei would not admit it. Long Yanwei, you are not allowed to leave. Qin Yun's expression turned gloomy. Long Yanwei said with a sneer, "What? Do you want to challenge me? But I can't fight at all right now. Do you want to take advantage of me? It's not strange. After all, you're not a good person to begin with. I'll stand where I am and let you punch me 3 times. If I fall, then I'll lose. I'll give you the Dao artifact. If you don't defeat me, then you'll have to cripple your own Dao core." As Qin Yun spoke, he took off the Dao armor on his body. Long Yanwei looked at Qin Yun's bare upper body and clenched his fists tightly. Then, he looked at the Long family's martial master. The martial master slowly nodded. All right. Long Yanwei's current strength was still very strong. Tian Ruling, who had recovered a lot, frowned slightly. Yu Wulan also felt that something was amiss because everyone could tell that Long Yanwei was not seriously injured. Chapter 514. 3 punches. Xiong Dao sighed and walked out. He said, "Qin Yun, don't try to be brave." Qin Yun said confidently, "Hall Master, don't worry. I will win." "Qin Yun, you better not cower." Long Yanwei sneered. "Trash like you can't beat me at all." Qin Yun had been besieged by a few martial masters, but he had a Dao artifact armor on him, so he was not injured. Xiong Dao could not persuade Qin Yun and did not continue. He only watched from the side. This made Yu Wulan stomp her feet anxiously. "Come and fight." Qin Yun looked at Long Yanwei and shouted. "Qin Yun, I saw that you were attacked just now. There must be quite a few injuries on your body. I won't take advantage of you and let you rest." After Long Yanwei finished speaking, he swallowed a pill. Everyone immediately cursed in their hearts. It was clearly Long Yanwei who wanted him to rest, but he made it sound so nice. "Qin Yun, don't even think about defeating Brother Lu. He is now a disciple of the Immortal Sect. As long as he steps into the spirit realm, he can become a main sect disciple of the Medicine Immortal Valley." When Long Yanwei said this, his face was filled with yearning. The main sect disciple of the immortal sect had a very high status. Once Brother Lu becomes a main sect disciple of the immortal sect, there will be many people who can't wait to capture you and send you to Brother Lu. As Long Yanwei spoke, he refined the pill he had just eaten. Qin Yun looked at Long Yanwei quietly. Of course, he could tell what this fellow was thinking. Qin Yun did not take Long Yanwei's petty tricks to heart at all, because no matter what, he was confident that he could receive 3 punches from Long Yanwei. The disciples of the immortal sect should be about the same as you, a bunch of trash, Qin Yun said with a sneer. You can insult me, but you can't insult the disciples of the immortal sect. Long Yanwei was immediately enraged. If you had seen the strength of the disciples of the immortal sect, you would know how terrifying they are. Xiong Dao is only being arrogant here. If he were to go to the 5 great immortal sects, even a young man would be able to make him kneel and beg for mercy. Qin Yun glanced at Xiong Dao and asked, Hall Master, is this true? There is such a situation. However, there shouldn't be many young people who can make me kneel and beg for mercy. Xiong Dao smiled. I want to see which young people are so powerful. Ignorant. Long Yanwei sneered. When Brother Lu steps into the spirit realm, enters the main sect and obtains the immortal Dao inheritance, you will be able to see how powerful he is. Long Yanwei, how much longer do you want to spout nonsense? Qin Yun asked indifferently. My time is limited. It's done now. After Long Yanwei finished speaking, he ran back for more than 1,000 meters. He actually wanted to sprint 1,000 meters. This guy is really of the highest quality. Yu Wulon looked at Long Yanwei with disdain and snorted. This kind of villain can enter the Grasswood Star Sect of the 5 major star sects. It can be seen that the 5 major star sects are not that good. Tian Ruling smiled disdainfully. One day, I will let the trash of the 5 great star sects know that becoming a disciple of the 5 great star sects does not have any sense of superiority. Long Yanwei ferociously charged over. With a roar, he punched Qin Yun's chest. Boom! Long Yanwei's fist exploded with a purplish-gold brilliance as it produced a loud sound. In Qin Yun's heart, there was a black vibration martial spirit. When Long Yanwei's fist came charging over, Qin Yun had already condensed the power of vibration. When Long Yanwei's fist came smashing over, the vibration power also erupted. As a result, the power of Long Yanwei's punch was repelled by Qin Yun. Although the power of the recoil had weakened a lot, it still caused Long Yanwei's arm to feel extreme pain. Everyone could see that Long Yanwei's arm was trembling slightly. Long Yanwei endured the pain and did not cry out. He had punched Qin Yun with such great force, but Qin Yun was completely fine. If he were to cry out in pain, he would definitely be laughed at to death. Long Yanwei, who was dead set on losing face, endured the pain and broke out in cold sweat. He did not even cry out. His endurance made Qin Yun admire him a little. The first punch. Qin Yun shouted lazily. There are still 2 more punches. When everyone saw Qin Yun's casual expression, they were all astonished. The position of his heart was actually completely fine after being punched with such great force. Long Yanwei felt that it was very strange, but he had no choice but to continue fighting. He waited for the pain in his arm to lessen by a lot before running 1,000 meters away. This time, when he was sprinting, his fist emitted a purplish-gold light, condensing into a ball of air that turned into a dragon head. It's the Long family's high-grade Earth-tier martial art, Nirvana Dragon Fist. The Nirvana Dragon Fist is said to be ranked in the top 10 of the Earth-tier martial arts. Isn't that so? I just wonder what realm Long Yanwei has mastered it to. From the looks of it, he should be at the initial stage. The Nirvana Dragon Fist at the initial stage is also very terrifying. Long Yanwei is truly powerful. He can actually grasp the Nirvana Dragon Fist to the initial stage. Everyone discussed in surprise, praising Long Yanwei. Yu Wulon and Tian Ruling were both disciples of the 5 great clans. They knew how terrifying the Long family's Nirvana Dragon Fist was and were secretly worried. Yu Wulon held onto Tian Ruling's arm tightly, worried that Qin Yun's body would be pierced by the punch. Qin Yun, go to hell! When Long Yanwei heard everyone's praises, he immediately burst with confidence and punched out. The fist struck out and a dragon's roar shook the heavens. The violent wind that surged out was like the roar of an angry dragon, its momentum astonishing. Ha! Long Yanwei's face twitched as he let out a muffled groan. His fist was pressed against Qin Yun's chest as he slowly retracted it. This time, the recoil was even stronger. Long Yanwei felt that the bones in his arm were showing signs of cracking. This also caused him to let out a muffled groan. If not for the fact that there were so many people watching, he would have definitely rolled on the ground and screamed. Everyone looked at Qin Yun as though they had seen a ghost. Qin Yun had been punched twice in a row, but he did not move at all. It was extremely strange. Forget about the first punch, the second punch was a very powerful Nirvana Dragon Fist. However, Qin Yun still acted as though nothing had happened. One had to know that Qin Yun had the power of the Nether Sun to protect his body. An ordinary 9th-level martial Dao cultivator would find it difficult to break through his defense. Furthermore, he had a powerful body. In order to accommodate 3 Dao cores, he had no choice but to cultivate his body to the extreme. He didn't even let his bloodline boil, yet he easily blocked Long Yanwei's Annihilation Dragon Fist and even repelled it. When Long Yanwei saw Qin Yun's mocking smile, he was infuriated to the extreme. Last punch. Qin Yun smiled. Don't worry, my last punch will definitely break through your defense. Long Yanwei's expression was very ugly. The martial masters of the Long family were also somewhat worried. After Long Yanwei ran far away, he once again rushed over. This time, he changed his arm. Furthermore, there was a fire crocodile that flickered with purple-gold flames coiled around his arm. This was also Long Yanwei's martial spirit. He turned his Dao energy into nothingness and condensed a martial spirit virtual image. He attached it to his arm and then executed the Nirvana Dragon Fist. Roar. The Annihilation Dragon Fist let out a roar like that of a raging dragon. This time, Long Yanwei struck Qin Yun's abdomen. Long Yanwei was filled with confidence, believing that he could defeat Qin Yun. However, when his fist came into contact with Qin Yun's abdomen, he felt that it was incomparably hard. Following that, an extremely powerful force surged out. Ah! Long Yanwei screamed miserably. His arm exploded into pieces, and a bloody mist gushed out from the shock. My arm! My arm is crippled! Long Yanwei cried out in pain. What was funny was that he was actually in so much pain that tears streamed down his face, and he rolled on the ground. According to the previous agreement, if you lose, you have to destroy your own Dao core. Qin Yun's voice carried an ice-cold chill, as well as a mocking tone. Do you want to do it yourself, or should I? The Long family's martial master immediately said angrily, Qin Yun, you dare? He punched me 3 times but didn't knock me down. He lost. If you lose, you have to admit defeat. Qin Yun sneered at the Long family's martial master. If he wants to go back on his word, that's fine. Give me 3 punches. Or, the 2 of you can take a punch from me. At this moment, Long Yanwei was only injured in his arm. If his Dao core was crippled, it would be completely destroyed. Alright. The Long family's middle-aged martial master immediately agreed. The middle-aged martial master felt that if Qin Yun did not use a Dao artifact, he would only have the strength of a 9th-level martial Dao cultivator. With his cultivation at the spirit realm, he would definitely be able to withstand a punch. There were 2 martial masters from the Long family. Although their arms were injured, the power of their Dao cores were not injured. They all believed that it would be very easy for each of them to receive a punch from Qin Yun. Come. The middle-aged martial master from the Long family said coldly. Qin Yun did not run up or anything. He slowly walked over and punched out. A violent black vibrating power accompanied the heavenly lion's lightning force. He had used the primordial Tao energy of his dual Tao cores. Boom! A loud sound echoed out as the ground trembled slightly. Qin Yun's fist had pierced through the martial master's abdomen and came out of his body. Everyone was so shocked that their mouths gaped open. They were like stone sculptures as they watched Qin Yun slowly retract his fist. There was an empty hole in the martial master's abdomen. It had been pierced through by Qin Yun's punch. Even Xiong Dao was stunned as he slowly sucked in a breath of cold air. Qin Yun looked at the other old martial master and said, "It's your turn. Die." The old martial master roared as he struck at Qin Yun with his palm. Qin Yun suddenly struck out with his saber and cut off the old man's arm before his palm could land. Such a fast saber strike speed caused many saber users to feel a wave of fear. "You're already an adult, you have to keep your word." Xiong Dao was truly shocked by Qin Yun's strength. He was now helping Qin Yun. Boom! Qin Yun punched out, creating a large hole in the Long family's martial master's abdomen. The two martial masters of the Long family had been crippled by Qin Yun. "Qin Yun, our Long family will not let you off." The old man's resentful voice was like the angry roar of a wild beast. "Tian Ruling is my friend. If your Long family wants to kill her, I will definitely not sit idly by. Sooner or later, we will fight the Long family." Chapter 5:15. Saber and Sword Attack and Defense. The people from the Long family and the Yang family regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. Originally, they had spent a lot of effort to bribe the upper echelons of Saber Sword Villa. By arranging for Qin Yun and company to leave the city, they would have a chance to take action. If they succeeded, they would be able to obtain a Tao artifact and take down Tian Ruling. But now they hadn't even touched a Tao artifact, nor had they taken down Tian Ruling. The worst off was the Long family. Two martial masters were crippled by Qin Yun. It could be said that this was the biggest loss the Long family had suffered in many years. Yu Wulan came behind Qin Yun and checked his injuries. The old woman sent by the Yu clan was originally going to take Yu Wulan away. But now, seeing Qin Yun's immense potential, he felt that it was not bad for Yu Wulan to be together with Qin Yun. He might really be able to obtain a Tao artifact. Therefore, he didn't care about Yu Wulan anymore. Not long after Yu Wulan arrived beside Qin Yun, the expression of Long Yanwei, whose arm had been crippled, suddenly turned cold. He took out a small bamboo tube. Xiu xiu xiu. A few black needles suddenly flew out and shot towards Yu Wulan. This scene was seen by many surrounding martial artists. They all thought that Yu Wulan was going to be hit by a hidden weapon. Yu Wulan was already prepared. Her body overflowed with a faint golden light, fixing the few black needles beside her neck. "Bastard, you really have a hidden weapon!" As Yu Wulan spoke, she flew over and gently rubbed Long Yanwei's head with her small and delicate palm. A muffled bang resounded. For some reason, Long Yanwei's head suddenly split open. Long Yanwei was dead. After being rubbed lightly by Yu Wulan, his head split open and he died. Even Qin Yun was dumbfounded by this strange technique. Yu Wulan, you killed Long Yanwei." The crippled middle-aged martial master from the Long family roared. He had just finished speaking when Yu Wulan flew over in a flash. Yu Wulan's lily-white hand slapped towards the head of the middle-aged man from the Long family. The middle-aged man's head exploded and he died. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. Yu Wulan also struck towards the old man from the Long family beside her. Before the old man could even say anything, his head was already smashed by Yu Wulan. What was even more frightening was that Yu Wulan actually said in a sweet voice, "They are all crippled. I am helping them by ending their unfortunate lives. They'll be grateful. The old woman of the Yu family had a look of f*ck a dog on her face. She thought that the conflict here was already over. That was why he asked Yu Wulan to get close to Qin Yun so that he could ask for a Dao artifact in the future. But she never thought that not long after Yu Wulan went over, the heads of the three people from the Long family exploded. Tian Ruling was not surprised at all. If it was her, she would also fly into a rage after being ambushed by Long Yanwei's hidden weapon. Yu Wulan held the small bamboo tube in her hand and shot a few black poison needles at the injured Yang Haipeng, not far away. Swoosh! The poison needle stabbed into Yang Haipeng's neck, and his neck immediately turned black. Amazing! After Yu Wulan finished speaking, she hopped into the city gate to hide. The people from the Yang family were infuriated. They hurriedly helped Yang Haipeng expel the poison while constantly cursing Yu Wulan. Xiong Dao grabbed Qin Yun and brought him back to the city gate. The three of you go back. Xiong Dao was worried that if this continued, the sky might be pierced. The people from the Long family had all been killed. Two of them were martial masters and one of them was a 9th-level martial Dao cultivator who had entered the Wood Star Palace. The Lu family had also been completely annihilated. The martial masters of the Yang and Tian families had their arms chopped off and they had lost all face. The Yang and Long families of the 5 great clans had been completely offended by Qin Yun, Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling. As for Xiong Dao, the hall master of the Saber Hall, he seemed to be provoking these few great clans. This kind of thing could be considered very crazy in the proud Star State. The onlookers who had witnessed the entire process were all filled with shock and relish as they told their friends and relatives about this matter. Saber Sword Villa, southeast region where the Saber Hall was located. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan returned to the 9th Saber Academy and entered a small hall. Elder Yu Liang and Tian Chueo, were you the ones who killed them? Xiong Dao looked at Qin Yun and company and asked with a frown. How is that possible? Qin Yun said. That's right, we have no enmity with them, why would we kill them? Yu Wulan hurriedly said. Xiong Dao snorted. I knew you would not admit it even if you died. In short, just make sure you do it cleanly. Hall Master, thank you for your help, Qin Yun said gratefully with a smile. Xiong Dao sighed. Dao Fan is my old friend. He came to me and asked me to help you. If you want to thank someone, thank him. The Long family has 2 elders in the Elders' Hall. They have arranged this kind of thing for you to do and Dao Fan cannot disobey. Otherwise, he and all of you will be expelled from Saber Sword Villa. You are all outer sect disciples. As long as you violate the rules, they have enough reason to expel you. After hearing Xiong Dao's words, Qin Yun and company knew that the Long family's influence in Saber Sword Villa was not small. Hall Master, how can I become a main sect disciple? Tian Ruling asked coldly. She also realized the importance of becoming a main sect disciple. Just like the other sects, step into the spirit realm and become a martial master. Xiong Dao smiled. You have just entered Saber Sword Villa, don't even think about this kind of thing. Hall Master, is your power in Saber Sword Villa big? Can you really protect us? Yu Wulan asked worriedly. As long as you don't violate the rules in Saber Sword Villa, I can still help you. Xiong Dao's face darkened. So, you must properly abide by the rules here. Xiong Dao took a sip of the tea that Qin Yun poured and continued. Saber Sword Villa has 5 halls, other than the Elders' Hall. In each hall, the Hall Master has the greatest authority. As for the Elders of the Elders' Hall, some are in charge of miscellaneous matters, and some are in charge of supervising the Hall Master, maintaining the operation of Saber Sword Villa. There are big and small elders. The Hall Master of the Elders' Hall is the Villa Master of Saber Sword Villa. He rarely appears. In short, I haven't seen him for decades. He might be cultivating in the Immortal sect. Now, Qin Yun and company had a certain understanding of Saber Sword Villa. Xiong Dao continued, the main sect disciples are in the Saber Academy and Sword Academy. They are all royal grade academies. These fellows are also competing for the opportunity to enter the immortal sect. If you are outstanding enough, you will eventually have the chance to enter the immortal sect. Tian Ruling asked coldly, which immortal sect can we enter? Immortal Weapon City or Sword Immortal Pavilion? These two immortal sects have a good relationship with our Saber Sword Villa. Xiong Dao finished his cup of tea and walked to the entrance of the small hall. I'm going back. All of you will have to listen to Dao Fan's arrangements. Qin Yun and company sent Xiong Dao out of the Saber Academy. Yu Wulon said in a low voice, the Ji clan's twin fiends have been taken away. I hope they can keep it a secret. Qin Yun shook his head and said with a smile, the Ji clan is also worried that they will follow us and mess around. The Ji clan is truly far-sighted. Yu Wulon smiled and said, now it's good. The three of us have completely offended a few great clans. Saber Sword Villa's strength is not bad. Furthermore, they want to become a powerful sect that can stand shoulder to shoulder with the 5 great star sections. Therefore, they will definitely not show any weakness to the 5 great clans. Tian Ruling said, as long as we are here, we will be safe for the time being. Yu Wulon smiled tenderly and said, Qin Yun, Ruling, how about this? We can be considered to have gone through thick and thin together. How about we become sworn siblings? Alright. In any case, I have been completely abandoned by the Tian family. I have nothing to worry about in the Tian family. Tian Ruling smiled lightly. Qin Yun, what do you think? It can't be that you don't like us two little sisters, right? Yu Wulon shook Qin Yun's arm and muttered, Big brother Qin, just agree, let's become sworn brothers. Well, cough cough. Qin Yun scratched his head and said with a smile, I might be younger than you guys. How is this possible? Yu Wulon said in surprise. Tian Ruling also found it hard to believe because with Qin Yun's strength, it was impossible for him to be that young. They felt that Qin Yun should be around 30 years old. When Dao Fan returned, he was relieved to see that Qin Yun and company were fine. The three of you have caused such a big trouble, and yet you're still chatting and laughing here. You don't have the slightest bit of nervousness. Dao Fan shook his head and smiled. Old Fan, Qin Yun said that he's younger than us. Do you believe him? Yu Wulon said with slight annoyance, I'm 26. I'm 27. Tian Ruling said coldly. Dao Fan took out a disc and said, place your hand on it and you'll be able to see your age. There was a crystal in the middle of the disc. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulon placed their hands on it one after another to test their age. Indeed, it was the same as they had said. After Qin Yun put it on, it showed 21. Yu Wulon, Tian Ruling and Old Fan were all stunned. They had originally thought that Qin Yun was around 25. But he was only in his early 20s. Is it strange? Qin Yun said with a smile. It's not strange to be at the 9th level of the martial Dao at the age of 20. However, it's very rare to see someone as strong as you. Yu Wulon hurriedly pinched Qin Yun's face and said with a charming smile, Little brother, quickly call me big sister. I didn't expect you to be such a stinking brat. You actually lied to me that you have a wife. Dao Fan said, you guys rest for a few days and recuperate from your injuries. I'll start guiding you in your cultivation of the common saber technique. Although there were only 3 people in this saber academy, they were all very strong and had great potential. Dao Fan was very optimistic about the saber academy that he led. In 10 days, it will be the saber sword attack and defense competition. At that time, the Saber Academy or Sword Academy that obtains first place will have a very rich reward. Of course, it's impossible for our 9th Saber Academy to get first place. We just need to enter the top 20. If you can't enter the top 20, you'll have to mine for half a year. If you're at the bottom, You'll have to do odd jobs in the villa for a year after mining for half a year. When Yu Wulan heard this, she asked worriedly, "Is it difficult to enter the top 20? Dao Fan's expression was solemn as he said, "It's not difficult to say it's difficult, but it's not easy either. This is because the upper, middle and lower rank saber and sword academies will compete together." Chapter 5:16. Made to measure. When Dao Fan said that, Qin Yun and company immediately felt the pressure. They didn't want to mine for half a year. Putting aside whether it was hard or not, it would definitely waste half a year's time. Moreover, they would be exposed to the outside of Saber Sword Villa. It was very easy for the Long and Yang families to take revenge. Dao Fan only talked about the saber and sword attack and defense competition before returning to his room. Qin Yun and company were very tired today. The sky was already dark, so they hurried back to rest. Tian Ruling's external injuries were quite severe. The damage to the Dao core in her body was not serious, and she would be able to recover very quickly. After resting for a night, Tian Ruling had completely recovered. Yu Wulan was in a small hall, humming a cheerful tune. She took out some snacks and fruits and placed them on the table. "Because we escorted the sword and saber to the sword and saber pool, our 9th Saber Academy received 500 contribution points." Yu Wulan hurriedly said with a smile when she saw Qin Yun arrive. "What are these contribution points for?" asked Qin Yun. "If we accumulate enough contribution points, our Saber Academy will be able to advance. This is what Elder Fan told me just now." Yu Wulan shook her head. Tian Ruling also came to the small hall and ate a spirit fruit. "You guys woke up really early." Tian Ruling had recovered quite well. It was impossible to tell that she had been injured. Yu Wulan said, "Sister, you have almost recovered. Let's start letting Elder Fan guide us in our cultivation." Tian Ruling nodded. She also knew that the common saber art was very powerful. It allowed them to exert more power when they used their sabers. Dao Fan left early in the morning and only returned when it was almost noon. "Old Fan, you can teach us the common saber technique," Yu Wulan said impatiently. "All right. But I have to tell you one thing, the Long family has issued a Heavenly Dragon Pursuit Order." Dao Fan said, "The main reason is to hunt down the 3 of you. Therefore, when you go out, you must be careful. It's best if you don't go out for the time being." "The Heavenly Dragon Hunting Order sounds really powerful." Qin Yun smiled. It was not that he had never been wanted before, so he was not afraid at all. "Xiao Yun, this is the wanted poster with the most bounty in the Long family. It's 200 million purple coins. The 3 of us are 600 million, Yu Wulan said with a worried look. "Wulan, you were so straightforward when you killed the Long family. Now you no fear?" Qin Yun said with a smile. "Since it has already happened, let it be. We just need to be careful." Tian Ruling let out a long sigh. Her heart was heavy. It was obvious that she was affected by the Heavenly Dragon Pursuit Order. Yu Wulan scoffed. "It's all the fault of those fellows from the Long family. They killed others, but nothing happened to them. But when we want to kill them, we issue some order to kill them. These arrogant fellows, relying on the fact that they have a lot of purple coins, they go around bullying others. If others resist, they will ruthlessly suppress them. I don't have many purple crystal coins, but I have a Dao artifact. What if I use a Dao artifact to place a bounty on the head of the Long family's patriarch?" Qin Yun looked at Dao Fan. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan were also shocked. "Qin Yun, are you serious?" Dao Fan took a deep breath. "If you really did that, the Long family's patriarch's life would definitely not be easy. The Long family's patriarch also has some enemies. His enemies will definitely be very happy." Yu Wulan laughed. "Elder Fan, is there any way to issue such a killing order?" Tian Ruling asked coldly. "There is, but it's a bit difficult to deal with the Long family. I'll go ask Xiong Dao. He might have a way. After Dao Fan finished speaking, he hurriedly left the courtyard. Xiao Yun, you really have a lot of Dao artifacts. Yu Wulan looked pitifully at Qin Yun and said with a pout. You want it? Qin Yun said with a smile. Who doesn't want a Dao artifact? Yu Wulan said with a yearning expression. For the sake of a Dao artifact, she was willing to sacrifice herself to Qin Yun. However, Qin Yun remained indifferent. She had no other choice. Although a Dao artifact is good, I can only unleash 20 to 30% of its power. The Dao artifact that Xiao Yun gave me is a saber, but I can't completely adapt to it. Tian Ruling looked at the Dao artifact in her hand and sighed. That's right, because you haven't refined this Dao artifact yet. If you want to quickly adapt to a Dao artifact, during the refining process, the Dao inscription master will collect a vat of your blood, or even more blood, and use it to tailor a Dao artifact for you. This way, you can quickly adapt to the Dao artifact and fully unleash its power. Qin Yun ate the snacks and talked about the Dao artifact. Yu Wulan frowned slightly and said, if that's the case, doesn't that mean that after I completely adapt to the Xian artifact, the power I can unleash is stronger than a Dao artifact that hasn't been refined before? Tian Ruling took out the saber and caressed the blade. She felt somewhat helpless. Qin Yun said, to us, a Dao artifact can easily break through the defense of many armors. But it's only for relatively inferior armor. If we were to face a Dao artifact armor, it wouldn't be of much use. Yu Wulan said with some disappointment, so there are actually so many ways to use a Dao artifact. In that case, if it's not a custom-made Dao artifact, then wouldn't it be very bad to use it? Then why do so many people want it? Because she thought that after obtaining a Dao artifact, her strength would greatly increase. If it's a martial monarch at the Xian martial realm, they can quickly refine a Dao artifact. As for us, we are only at the martial Dao realm. If we want to refine a Dao artifact, it will take a very long time. It might take over 100 years. Even a martial master would need more than 10 to 20 years to be able to unleash the power of a 4th or 5th level Dao artifact. Of course, in the long run, as long as you obtain a Dao artifact and refine it for a few hundred years, you will be able to fully unleash the power of a Dao artifact. Qin Yun explained slowly. Little brother Yun, how do you know so much? Where did your Dao artifact come from? Yu Wulan pinched Qin Yun's handsome face and asked curiously. I picked it up. Qin Yun smiled. He had often answered others in this manner in the past. I don't believe it. Yu Wulan snorted lightly. Qin Yun said, Wulan, you don't have a good weapon, do you? Hm. In order to get a good weapon, I'm willing to sell myself. Little brother Yun, I don't need a Dao artifact anymore. It's not very useful. Yu Wulan looked at Qin Yun pitifully and said with a sweet pout. We've known each other for a while and now we're in trouble together. I'll give you a royal grade spirit artifact. Qin Yun thought for a moment and said, Really? Royal grade spirit artifact is also very good. Yu Wulan shouted in surprise, Do you want me to devote my life to you? Your body is more precious than a Dao artifact. Take good care of it. Don't give yourself away so easily. Qin Yun also pinched her beautiful and playful jade face. Tian Ruling shook her head and smiled. Little Yun, that's because she wants to rely on you. If it was anyone else, even if you gave her 10 Dao artifacts, she wouldn't agree to give herself. Yu Wulan quickly pulled Qin Yun's hand and said coquettishly, Little Yun, do you think I'm too old? Of course not, I really have a wife. She's from the Nether Moon Palace. Qin Yun said with a smile. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan were slightly surprised and couldn't believe it. It's very difficult to enter the Nether Moon Palace. Moreover, the disciples are also very strict and are not allowed to come into contact with men. Yu Wulan frowned and said, Are you lying to me? Of course not. Qin Yun didn't know the rules of the Nether Moon Palace. Then how about we become brother and sister? I will definitely protect you well in the future, Yu Wulan quickly said. Alright, little brother greets big sister and second sister. Qin Yun smiled helplessly and quickly bowed to Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. Although Tian Ruling became very violent with a single word, Qin Yun admired her very much. I have to say, big sister's eyes are still very good. From the beginning, she took a fancy to little brother Yun and pulled you into the team. But I don't dare to try. Yu Wulan laughed at herself. It's already good that you didn't laugh at my one spirit vein. Qin Yun smiled and then walked into the room. Previously, they had killed Yu Liang and Tian Chueo together. When they were outside the city, they fought against the Long family and Yang family together. Now, they were being chased by the Long family's heavenly dragon hunting order. As a result, the three of them had established a certain level of trust with each other. Qin Yun brought Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan into the secret chamber. Second sister, if you want a better royal-grade spirit artifact, I can't give it to you in a short period of time, because I want to tailor it for you, Qin Yun said with a serious expression. What? Tailor-made? Yu Wulan was immediately surprised. Little Yun, are you saying that you want to refine a royal-grade spirit saber for Wulan? Tian Ruling's cold and arrogant beautiful face was filled with surprise. Yes. To be honest, I am a king-level spirit inscription master. Qin Yun smiled. Because of some conflict with the inscription palace, I don't have a badge. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan both knew that Qin Yun was only in his early 20s. It was already very rare for a person in his early 20s to be able to kill a martial master. As for Qin Yun, he was actually a king-level spirit inscription master. Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling's faces were filled with disbelief. It wasn't that they didn't trust Qin Yun, but it was because it was too inconceivable. I was the one who refined the royal-grade body-securing talisman. When Qin Yun saw the disbelief in the eyes of the two girls, he curled his lips and said, Little Yun, with your talent, you will definitely be able to enter the inscription hall and receive very good treatment. Tian Ruling said coldly. I'm not going. I don't want to reveal that I'm an inscription master right now. Qin Yun remembered that back in the Martial Desolate, there were many people who wanted to snatch the inscriptions he had mastered. Then how are you going to tailor a spirit artifact for me? Yu Wulan could only believe in Qin Yun. I want your blood and mental power. Qin Yun took out a large bottle and a bead. The bottle is used to store blood and the bead can store mental power. You just need to fill it up. Originally, he had only begun to use this method when refining a Xian artifact. However, Qin Yun had mastered the star and moon runes, so he could now use this method to make the royal-grade spirit artifact more compatible with its master. Little Yun, I'll return the Dao artifact to you. You should also refine a saber for me. Tian Ruling took out the Dao artifact saber and returned it to Qin Yun. Qin Yun nodded and said, We need to refine it as soon as possible in 10 days. Chapter 5:17. Cold Clouds and Willow Moon. Qin Yun took out more than 10 horned demon wolf horns. Yu Wulan was also a little surprised to see these long horns. The horned demon wolf's horn is extremely stiff. It can be used to refine Xian artifacts. This is a Xian magical beast, and this horn is the toughest part of a horned demon wolf's body. So I kept more than 10 of them, Qin Yun said with a smile. He had a blueprint of a Xian saber, so he had a rough idea of how to refine a Xian artifact. Materials to refine profound armaments? Xiao Yun, why is that still a royal-grade spirit artifact? Yu Wulan said in surprise. She did not understand the knowledge of refining. The sabers that I've refined for you are all low-grade profound artifact. Some of them are even comparable to mid-grade profound artifact. However, my cultivation is too low and I am unable to carve profound Xian runes, so it cannot be considered a Xian artifact. Qin Yun had refined a Xian artifact before, but that was with Zi Qingqing's help. Furthermore, that Xian artifact was not perfect, unless he could step into the spiritual martial realm. For him, who had just stepped into the 9th level of the martial Tao, the spiritual martial realm was out of reach. When I step into the spirit martial realm in the future, I will erase the spirit runes on it and then carve Xian runes on it. It will be a Xian artifact. Qin Yun took out some Xian Yuan steel and began to organize the materials. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan only believed that Qin Yun was an inscription master. Now, when they saw that Qin Yun had many materials, they had no choice but to believe him. Xiao Yun, I have a piece of profound Bing steel here. Can I refine it into my blade? Tian Ruling took out a snow-white profound ice steel that was half the height of a person from a storage bag. Yes. Qin Yun nodded and smiled. If it's done, the blade might be white. Xiao Yun, I've also collected some materials. Yu Wulan handed a large silver stone to Qin Yun and said, "This is called Halo Xian stone. I don't know what use it has, but someone said that it can be used to refine weapons." "Alright, I will help you refine them into weapons." Qin Yun collected their materials. Then, he asked about the shape of the saber and other requirements. Yu Wulan needed a slender heavy saber that was 2 fingers wide. Although the blade was long and slender, it had to be heavy. It would be best if it weighed at least 10,000 jin. As for the saber that Tian Ruling needed, the blade had to be as long as she was tall. The blade had to be as big as a palm, the back of the blade had to be thick, and the entire body had to be heavy. The similarity between their requirements was that they were heavy. However, the difference was that they were at 2 extremes. In order to increase the weight, Qin Yun needed more Xian Yuan steel and heavy Xian iron. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan both had some purple coins. They directly bought them in the Saber Sword Villa's market. The materials he bought were all of inferior quality, but they were cheap. The reason why heavy profound iron and profound Yuan steel were of inferior quality was also because there were too many impurities inside. As long as the forging was done properly and the impurities could be removed, it would be fine. If it was in the past, Qin Yun would not have forged a Xian artifact's embryo. But now, he had the 9 Sun Divine Hammer. Using the 9 Sun Divine Hammer to forge materials would allow him to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Moreover, the power released by the 9 Sun Divine Hammer can also greatly improve the quality of the materials when it is forged. Qin Yun discovered that the talisman paper, forged by the 9 Sun Divine Hammer, had increased the power of the talismans by a lot. During the day, Dao Fan very carefully taught Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. He instructed them to use the mental cultivation method of the common saber technique to practice saber art. Over the past few days, Qin Yun had also learned about the situation of the saber and sword attack and defense battle. In the first month, all the saber academies of the upper, middle and lower grades would act as the defensive side. Then, all the sword academies of the upper, middle and lower grades would attack the saber academy. If the saber academy could successfully defend, they would be able to obtain points. If the sword academy was unable to defeat all the defending disciples, then even if they lost, they would lose and their points would be deducted. If an inferior grade courtyard successfully defended an inferior grade courtyard of the same level, then they would obtain 2 points. If they successfully defended an intermediate grade courtyard, they would obtain 4 points. As for defending against the attack of the upper grade courtyard, they would obtain 8 points. In every courtyard, there was a spirit formation arena that was dozens of meters wide. It was used for offensive and defensive battles. If the Sword Academy attacked the same grade Saber Academy, they would obtain 2 points. If they attacked a low-grade Saber Academy, they would at most get 1 point. If a low-grade Saber Academy was defeated by a high-grade Sword Academy, there would be no points deducted. As a result, a high-grade Sword Academy would generally not attack a low-grade Saber Academy. because there were only 2 chances to attack a day, they would definitely choose to attack an academy that could bring them more points. In the second month, it was the other way around. It was the Saber Hall attacking and the Sword Hall defending. On the offensive side, if they attacked above their level, they would obtain more points. However, the high-grade academies were generally very strong. It was difficult for the low-grade academies to break through the high-grade academies. 10 days passed quickly. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan's sabers had also been refined. Qin Yun had also refined 2 sets of black light inscription soft armor for them. It had both the ability to defend and heal. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan also participated in the refining at night. They had witnessed Qin Yun refine a royal-grade spirit artifact and believed that Qin Yun was a royal-grade spirit inscription master. Although they did not understand the Tao of inscriptions, they could tell that Qin Yun's level of inscriptions was extremely high. This was because Qin Yun did not need too much time to refine a royal-grade spirit artifact. In 10 days, he had refined 2 of them, and they were both top-notch ones. In the secret room, Tian Ruling held the snow-white heavy saber that was as tall as her and waved it a few times in satisfaction. This saber seems to be connected to my flesh and blood. The power I can unleash is much stronger than when I use a Tao artifact. Tian Ruling, who was holding the hilt of her saber tightly, said with an incomparable excitement in her voice, "Little brother Yun, you are truly a genius inscription master. Your Tao of inscriptions is much higher than your combat strength." Yu Wulan held the silver saber in her hand and was extremely satisfied. The most excited one was still Yu Wulan. She had longed for a weapon that she could use for a long time. Now that her wish had finally been fulfilled, she happily hugged Qin Yun and kissed his handsome face. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan had also discussed Qin Yun's origins in private. They did not ask further and knew that Qin Yun would not reveal his origins. "Give me a name," Qin Yun said with a smile. "Cold Cloud Saber." Tian Ruling seemed to have thought of a name and quickly said, "My name is Willow Moon Saber." Yu Wulan was very happy as she danced with the saber. Qin Yun looked at her beautiful and moving dance and suddenly thought of the phrase, "Dancing under the moon, blood surges like a raging wave." Yu Wulan, a woman with a complicated personality, was still very terrifying. When attacking and defending, you can use weapons, but that is only limited to Xian artifacts. Yu Wulan's jade face was filled with a gentle smile. "Little brother Yun, our sabers shouldn't be Xian artifacts, right? There are no Xian runes, so it can't be considered," Qin Yun said with a smile. "Your sabers also have a special ability. During battle, you can absorb other people's internal energy to replenish your own consumption. You can absorb it by touching someone else's saber or by stabbing it into someone else's body." The reason why he had this ability was because Qin Yun had carved a strange star rune on the saber. It was called the Origin Drawing Star Rune. How magical! Tian Ruling's beautiful face was filled with surprise. "Little brother Yun, with your level of inscription, entering the 5 great immortal sects will definitely not be a problem." "Little brother Yun, you wanted to be a medicine farmer back then. It's such a waste of talent." Yu Wulan hurriedly nodded. Qin Yun smiled and shook his head before taking out 5 throwing knives. These throwing knives were all refined from Xian-level soul essences, and were also very strong royal-grade spirit essence treasures. Using his powerful mental energy, coupled with his superb imperial spirit technique, he could make his flying daggers extremely powerful. "Second sister, your Willow Moon Saber can release a type of power that can cause your opponent to fall into a temporary state of dizziness. You need to familiarize yourself with this." This was all the power of the Fainting Xian Stone. Qin Yun also had a Fainting Xian Rune. If he were to inscribe the Fainting Xian Rune in the future, the effect of dizziness would be even stronger. Qin Yun looked at Tian Ruling and said, "Big sister, your Cold Cloud Saber is refined from Xian Ice Steel. It is very helpful for you to release the power of ice. If you familiarize yourself with it in the future, you will be able to unleash an even stronger power of ice. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan finally experienced how powerful a custom-made weapon was. This was also the reason why inscription masters were so respected. Outside, Dao Fan shouted, "3 youngsters, hurry up and come out. I have something to tell you." Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan hurriedly put away their beloved sabers and walked out of the secret chamber with Qin Yun. The offensive and defensive battle will begin tomorrow. The rules have suddenly been changed. Originally, the defensive side could have counterattacked. After changing the rules, the defensive side is not allowed to counterattack the offensive side. Of course, the offensive side's time has also been shortened from the original hour to the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Not being able to counterattack meant that they could only constantly defend against the opponent's ferocious attacks. If they could counterattack, they could catch the opponent off guard and kill them while defending. This rule is very unpleasant, Tian Ruling said coldly. I can only take a beating and can't fight back. This is too depressing. Yu Wulan's face was also filled with hidden bitterness. That's not a problem. What I'm worried about is that the upper-grade courtyard will attack you. Because the Long and Yang families have said that as long as you are crippled in the offensive and defensive battle, the disciples of that courtyard will each receive 20 million purple coins. Dao Fan frowned and said with a heavy heart. The disciples of the upper-grade courtyard were also at the 9th level of the martial Dao. Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling had also said that even in the 5 great clans, if an outstanding disciple at the 9th level of the martial Dao could not enter the 5 great star sects, they would only receive 1 million purple coins every year. To those disciples, 20 million purple coins was a very considerable sum. It was worth it for them to attack the lower grade courtyard. Dao Fan sighed. They can get 1 point by attacking the lower grade courtyard. Attacking the same level as you can get 2 points, and not much of a loss. Therefore, it is very likely that the upper grade courtyard will attack you. Qin Yun was infuriated as he asked, Old Fan, how's the news of using a Dao artifact to capture the Long family's patriarch? As long as you are willing to mortgage 500 million purple coins, the demonesses of Demon Moon Island are willing to publicize this news for you. Dao Fan said, they specialize in this. Qin Yun did not have the prestige of the Long and Yang families, so he could only publish it through some reputable platforms. A girl from Demon Moon Island has come to our Saber Sword Villa to purchase ores. If you can take out 500 million purple coins, the Hall Master will arrange for her to come over and let you talk to her. Dao Fan said. Chapter 518. Invitation from the Moon Demon. The overall strength of the 3 moon sects was very mysterious. Some said that they were comparable to the immortal sects, while some said that they were on par with the 5-star sects. In short, these 3 moon sects, which were all women, were something that even the 5 great immortal sects did not dare to provoke. If Demon Moon Island were to help issue a bounty, there would be a certain guarantee that the people of the Spirit Desolate would believe them. In the afternoon, a woman from Demon Moon Island came. She was actually a profound realm martial lord. She was wearing a veil and a snow-white dress. A long snow-white tail was revealed behind her waist. She was a vixen. Although the Demon Moon Island's martial lord wore a veil, he had a pair of extremely charming and beautiful fox eyes. Young Master Qin, I am an elder of Demon Moon Island, Hu Jingxian. Can we talk alone? Although I'm a fox spirit, I've never eaten human flesh. You don't have to be afraid of me. Hu Jingxian's voice was gentle and sweet, with a hint of a smile. All right. Qin Yun made an inviting gesture before bringing Hu Jingxian into his room and into the secret chamber. The moment Hu Jingxian entered, she said with a chuckle, Qin Yun, I didn't expect you to still be forging artifacts here. You know about me? Qin Yun's expression sank as he asked. It's hard for us not to know about the big things you've done in the Martial Desolate. Hu Jingxian smiled lightly. Don't worry. Although the big powers know about it, they don't have time to care about you. They have more important things to do. In their eyes, you are just a weak little demon. As long as you are not a martial king, they will not take you seriously. My heavenly lion bloodline, heavenly lion totem, and heavenly lion dragon suppression cauldron? Don't they care at all? Qin Yun said in disbelief. It's not like I don't know. In short, they are busy with other matters, so they hid the matter of you being in the martial desolate land. They plan to deal with you after they are done with that matter. Hu Jingxian smiled and gracefully and charmingly sat down on a chair. Qin Yun, how about coming to our Demon Moon Island? We can make an exception and let you, a man, onto the island. Hu Jingxian looked at Qin Yun and retracted the smile on her face. My goal is to enter one of the 5 great immortal sects. Qin Yun said, this is also what Xie Qiru wanted him to do. As for why, Xie Qiru did not say. During this period of time, he was also unable to contact Xie Qiru. Our Demon Moon Island and the Demon Immortal Paradise are together. After you join our Demon Moon Island, when the time is right, we will recommend you to the Demon Immortal Paradise. Hu Jingxian also knew that Qin Yun's potential was extremely terrifying. Otherwise, their Demon Moon Island would not have made an exception and accepted a male disciple. I don't want to go now. I'll contact you when I think about it. Although Qin Yun wanted to go, he still wanted to study in Saber Sword Villa for a period of time. The speed at which he stepped into the 9th stage of the martial Dao was extremely fast, and he did not consolidate his cultivation during this period. In short, our Demon Moon Island will always welcome you. Hu Jingxian took off her veil, revealing her gentle and beautiful face. Qin Yun, Xiao Yuelan is your wife. She is in the Nether Moon Palace. It is a waste of talent. If you see her, it is best to persuade her to come to our Demon Moon Island. We will give her better treatment than the Nether Moon Palace. Although there are many demons in our Demon Moon Island, there are also human women. As long as it is a woman you recommend to our Demon Moon Island, we will accept all of them. There is no need for an examination. Qin Yun stared at Hu Jingxian's gentle and beautiful face and asked with some doubt, why do you trust me so much? Because of your potential. Your heavenly lion bloodline is an extinct bloodline from ancient times. Although in the spirit desolate, there are phoenix bloodline, dragon bloodline, Qilin bloodline and all kinds of ancient powerful beast bloodline, there is only the heavenly lion bloodline. Hu Jingxian faintly sighed. We also want to discover some secrets from it. Qin Yun did not believe Hu Jingxian's words. He took out his purple crystal card and said, I want to put up a wanted poster for the Long and Yang family's patriarchs. As long as I obtain their heads, I will be able to obtain 2 Dao artifacts. I don't want your purple coins as collateral. I will also help you issue the wanted poster. Hu Jingxian used her soft and tender jade-like hands to hold Qin Yun's hand. Qin Yun cursed the fox spirit in his heart. He also knew that Hu Jingxian did not do it on purpose. This fox spirit always unknowingly hooked a man's soul. Oh right, what are those great powers busy with? Qin Yun asked curiously. I won't tell you. Hu Jingxian smiled mischievously. With that, she hurriedly walked out of the secret room. Qin Yun followed her out. He wanted to ask her some questions, but she hurriedly walked out of the courtyard. He was at a loss as he thought about Hu Jingxian's words. Little brother Yun, what are you thinking about? Have you taken a fancy to that beautiful big sister fox? Yu Wulan's face was filled with jealousy as she patted Qin Yun's shoulder. Of course not. Qin Yun shook his head. That was because Demon Moon Island's attitude towards him was simply too good. He had not figured out the situation yet, so he did not plan on joining Demon Moon Island. How did the discussion go? Tian Ruling asked. It's a success. Qin Yun nodded before looking at Dao Fan. Thank you, Elder Fan. Oh right, Elder Fan, I'll entrust you with one more thing. As long as you cripple a disciple of the Long or Yang family in a battle of saber and sword attack, I will reward you with a Xian artifact. Qin Yun's words stunned Dao Fan. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan did not find it strange, because they knew that Qin Yun was a royal-grade spirit inscription master. As long as he stepped into the spirit realm, he would be able to refine Xian artifact. Qin Yun had killed quite a number of martial Dao realm cultivators in the ancient city of martial arts, but he had obtained many Xian artifacts. Alright. After Dao Fan recovered from his surprise, he said with a smile, "The Long and Yang families have placed a bounty on you and you have placed a bounty on them as well." The Saber Academy that Dao Fan led only had 3 disciples, but they were being offered a bounty by the Long and Yang families. He was naturally furious, but there was nothing he could do. Now that Qin Yun had used a Xian artifact to place a bounty on the disciples of the Yang and Long families, it could be considered a very beautiful counterattack. Tomorrow was the official start of the saber and sword attack, and the appearance of the bounty today caused many disciples of the Saber Hall and Sword Hall to boil with excitement. First, the Long and Yang families issued a bounty to cripple Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. Those who participated would receive 20 million purple coins. Following that, Qin Yun issued a bounty. As long as he crippled a disciple of the Long or Yang family, he would be able to obtain a Xian artifact as a bounty. If there were more than 10 disciples in a large courtyard, if they sold that Xian artifact, they might even be able to get tens of millions of purple coins. On the night after Qin Yun's bounty was issued, the disciples of the Long and Yang families temporarily did not participate in the saber and sword attack and defense battle for some reason. This was also because the 2 families had elders in the Hall of Elders, so they could casually withdraw. If it was anyone else, they would not be able to escape. It could be seen that neither the Long nor Yang families could afford to play. Qin Yun's bounty was too provocative. It was enough to make some people willing to take the risk. Motherf *Ker, how can the disciples of the Yang and Long families withdraw? Dao Fan cursed in a low voice in a displeased manner in a small hall. Old Fan, the effect I want has been achieved. I want to let the Long and Yang families know that we are not that easy to bully. Qin Yun poured tea for Dao Fan and said with a smile. Dao Fan also nodded his head. All along, they felt that only they could bully others and others would not retaliate against them. Now your counterattack is very powerful, and it has made them feel afraid. Tian Ruling said coldly, "What a pity. Otherwise, if we met them in the battle, we would have been able to personally kill them. Old Fan, it's very unfair for them to withdraw from this competition." How can Saber Sword Villa be so unprincipled? How can a disciple withdraw so casually? This is a compulsory competition. If they withdraw, wouldn't that be avoiding mining? Yu Wulan was very vexed. She had wanted to use the Willow Moon saber to kill off the disciples of the Long and Yang families during the battle. There will definitely be many disciples complaining about this matter. Qin Yun said, "Normally, the elders can turn a blind eye to this, but now that such a big matter has happened, I don't believe that the elders of the Long and Yang families can suppress this matter." Dao Fan said, "Let's wait and see tomorrow. Tonight, let's give our Saber Academy a name. I'll go get a plaque and hang it on the gate of the academy. Let's call it the Common Saber Academy. We all cultivate the common saber technique." Qin Yun hurriedly said. "I agree." Yu Wulan said. Tian Ruling also nodded. "Alright." Dao Fan was also somewhat happy. He said with a smile, "Go rest. Tomorrow we will begin the battle." The next morning, Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan, dressed in black, stood in the middle of the courtyard in the Spirit Formation martial field, waiting for the attackers. Outside the Spirit Formation martial field, Dao Fan said, During the offensive and defensive battles, as the defensive side, you can also use weapons to block. However, weapons can only be below the Xian artifact level. If the weapons you use have the power of Xian runes, the barrier will be able to detect it. Dao Fan was also a little worried about his 3 students because there were too few of them. Many of the middle and high-grade courtyards had more than 10 people. Suddenly, a group of white-clothed people walked in from the gate of the courtyard. The disciples of the Sword Hall were all dressed in white. After the group of white-clothed people walked in, a middle-aged man in black with a powerful aura followed behind them. Xiong Dao had also come. In addition, there were also a few golden-clothed elders from the Hall of Elders. They also walked into the Dao Fan Academy. Azure Thunder Sword Academy, you are an upper-grade academy. How shameless! You actually came to attack our lower-grade Saber Academy. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? When Dao Fan saw the group of white-clothed people, he sneered. As expected, Qin Yun and Company's first battle was the attack of the upper-grade academy. Although the disciples of the upper-grade academy were all at the 9th level of the martial Dao, they were all disciples who had been in the academy for a long time and had accumulated a lot of resources. Every month there would be Xian pills distributed. Those who could enter various training rooms to cultivate were all martial artists at the peak of the 9th level of the martial Dao. Most of the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy looked like middle-aged men. Only 2 of them were young. The teacher of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy was a hunchbacked old man. He said with a sinister smile, "We used 13 million purple coins to snatch the first choice to attack. Of course we want to get our money back." As the attacking side, the order of the many sword academies was decided by drawing lots. If they drew the first sword academy, they would be the first to choose to attack the Saber Academy. If they wanted to be the first sword academy to choose to attack, they could also buy it with purple coins. Therefore, in order to fight for the first choice to attack, Chapter 519. Control Divine Ability. Dao Fan looked at the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy and his expression gradually turned serious. "We admit defeat in this offensive and defensive battle," Dao Fan said with a cold face. "Admit defeat? I'm sorry, the rules that have just been changed do not allow escape. Even the disciples of the Long and Yang families can't withdraw even if they want to." The Azure Thunder Sword Academy's teacher chuckled. Xiong Dao also slowly nodded his head. "This is the message from the Villa Master. The rules have just been changed. The disciples of the Long and Yang families originally wanted to withdraw, but now they are forced to participate." A middle-aged man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy sneered. "Qin Yun, do you think that just because you used a Xian artifact to place a bounty on the disciples of the Long and Yang families, someone will respond? You are underestimating the Long and Yang families too much." "That's right, both of them have people in the Elders' Hall. You are too naive. No matter what, your Dao Fan Academy will be attacked by us for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. You will definitely lose." When Tian Ruling heard the middle-aged man's words, she was not afraid at all. She said coldly, "If the disciples of the Long and Yang families weren't truly afraid, why did they withdraw earlier? I think it's because those 2 elders are pressuring you that you don't dare to attack the disciples of the Long and Yang families." Yu Wulan sneered, "A bunch of cowards, they only dare to attack us. Trash that bullies the weak and fears the strong also dares to be so arrogant here." The Azure Thunder Sword Academy was an upper-grade academy. At this moment, they were being ridiculed by the 2 women and were infuriated. The others hurriedly left the martial field in the middle, allowing the disciples of the 2 academies to prepare for the battle. "Take out your weapons!" Xiong Dao shouted. He was in charge of supervising here, which made Dao Fan feel much more at ease. Both sides took out their weapons. Tian Ruling's white cold cloud saber was extremely eye-catching. The blade was nearly 1 8 meters long and was as tall as Tian Ruling. Furthermore, its entire body was snow white and it emitted a threatening cold aura. When everyone saw this saber, they were secretly amazed. This was because from the surface it looked very exquisite and beautiful. The slender willow moon saber in Yu Wulan's hand was also very beautiful. Most of the onlookers outside the martial field were seniors. They had been in Saber Sword Villa for many years and had done a lot of research on weapons. At this moment, it could be seen that the sabers in Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan's hands were very good royal-grade spirit artifacts, especially Tian Ruling's Cold Cloud saber. Because the blade was long and large, it was very easy to observe the runes on it. Although only the bright lines could be seen, if one observed carefully, they would be able to discover that those mysterious lines seemed to have fused with the blade. Coupled with the surging cold air, it was as if it was alive. The two royal-grade spirit sabers were of the best quality. Only an extremely high-level inscription master would be able to refine them, and the precision of the inscriptions would also be extremely high. What a good saber! I wonder which famous teacher did it. Xiong Dao was also a saber user, so he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. So what if it's a good saber? They will still be defeated in the end. The teacher of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy said sourly. The 10 disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy were also filled with jealousy. Although the swords in their hands were also royal-grade spirit weapons, they were far inferior in comparison. When the barrier was opened, if someone used a Dao artifact, the barrier would be able to sense it. You are not allowed to change weapons midway, Xiong Dao said again. Everyone was very puzzled. Who gave Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan their sabers? Because it looked very new, as if it had just been forged not long ago. As for the saber in Qin Yun's hand, it was a very ordinary long saber. There was nothing special about it, and it was unknown what grade of spirit artifact it was. This saber was a royal-grade spirit saber that Qin Yun had refined previously. The materials used were all very sturdy, and there was a type of thunder transformation star rune carved on it. It was also something that Qin Yun had done in the past 2 days. If the blade was struck by a powerful force, it would be able to absorb that force and explode out with a burst of lightning. This kind of offensive and defensive battle was not only a competition of strength but also financial resources. With enough financial resources, one could buy a good weapon. It would be of great help when defending or attacking. Begin! Xiong Dao shouted loudly. The first round of the sword attack and defense battle began. The 10 people from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy surrounded Qin Yun and company in an instant. I'll use Ice Wall. Tian Ruling hurriedly released an ice-cold energy, forming a circular wall that surrounded the 3 of them. The people of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy fiercely thrust their swords and struck out with lightning. Boom, boom, boom. After they attacked for a while, the ice wall finally couldn't hold on any longer. The wall is broken, let's prepare to defend. As Tian Ruling spoke, she hurriedly used her long cold cloud saber to block a few slashes. Qin Yun and Yu Wulan also brandished the sabers in their hands to block all sorts of attack. Dang 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 on the field, the sound of swords colliding could be heard. The people from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy were all very surprised. This was because when their swords touched Yu Wulan's Willow Moon saber, they would release a dizzying force, causing them to feel dizzy. If Yu Wulan could retaliate, they would have been killed long ago. Qin Yun's saber was also very strange. Upon contact, it would produce an electric current that would pass through the sword, causing one's entire body to feel numb. Tian Ruling's long white saber also caused the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy to feel fear. This was because after touching it, the sword would be frozen and a portion of their power would be absorbed. The 10 of you are attacking the 3 of us, and you are still so arrogant. Bullying the few and bullying the weak, what kind of ability is that? Qin Yun was infuriated when he saw the other party's ferocious attacks. These people from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy really wanted to cripple them, causing Qin Yun's whereabouts to be filled with killing intent. If they could retaliate, the 10 Azure Thunder Sword Academy disciples would have died long ago. Although Qin Yun and company had a good royal-grade spirit artifact, they were facing a siege of 10 people. Furthermore, they could only block and dodge. They couldn't retaliate at all. It was extremely aggrieving. Ah! Qin Yun was suddenly stabbed by a sword, causing him to let out a deep roar. On Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan's bodies, there were also sword scars and bloody holes. The 3 of them were defending against the attacks of 10 people. If they were not careful, they would be hit. Even though they were extremely fast to dodge and block their opponent's attacks, the martial field was too narrow and they were unable to run far away to dodge. Those 10 people were all ruthless and merciless people. They did not have to worry about being counterattacked, so they attacked with all their might. Half an incense stick of time passed. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan had more than 10 wounds on their bodies. Qin Yun had been stabbed the most and there were 4 bloody holes on his body. Their armor was still too weak. The people from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy had used a very strong primordial Tao force to pierce through their armor. If this goes on, they won't be able to hold on for an incense stick of time and will be crippled. And there's still another match in the afternoon. The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy laughed complacently. We will definitely take the bounty from the Long and Yang families. In this kind of offensive and defensive battle, one could not kill people. However, one could severely injure and cripple others. Dao Fan's face was extremely gloomy. The defensive side cannot counterattack. Furthermore, there are only 3 of us. We can't admit defeat either. We will definitely lose. No matter how you look at it, this rule is against us. Xiong Dao also said coldly, if Qin Yun and company can survive this month safely, those who have attacked them will not have a good ending. You have to think about the consequences. What are you afraid of? They will definitely be crippled, haha. The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy was extremely pleased with himself. A hero could not withstand a pack of wolves. Qin Yun and company were besieged by 10 people, and could not retaliate. It was impossible for them to not be injured. Big sister, second sister, hold on. Qin Yun was also very worried for them. Even though he was the most injured, the sabers in the hands of the 3 of them had some other effects when they blocked, which could affect the other party. Otherwise, they would have been crippled a long time ago. Qin Yun now knew the importance of defensive equipment. They needed better armor. If they had strong armor, they would only need to protect their heads. Qin Yun secretly blamed himself. He should not have been in a hurry to forge a weapon. They didn't want to fight for first place in the offensive and defensive battle. They just wanted to enter the top 20. Previously, Dao Fan's strategy was to give up and admit defeat even if he met the upper-grade academy. He could just give up and give up. But now, he couldn't give up. He had to persevere for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. It wasn't that they had miscalculated but that the rules had been changed too suddenly, causing them to be unprepared. This can't go on. There's still a defensive battle to be fought in the afternoon. Qin Yun gritted his teeth and endured the pain as he thought of a way. Although the 3 of them were injured, their Dao cores had a very strong power that they could not release. This was the most depressing thing. Suddenly, Qin Yun recalled Yang Shiyu's words. He had to flexibly use the power of the Earthquake Divine ability. After releasing the Earthquake Divine ability, it would be able to erupt with a strong vibration that poured into the earth. If he could control the explosive earthquake power, he would be able to have a very good defense. Qin Yun gritted his teeth and hurriedly activated the Earthquake Divine ability. A powerful force erupted from his Dao core and poured into the ground through his legs. Qin Yun hurriedly used his powerful mental energy to control the Earthquake Divine ability. He intercepted it and circulated it throughout his body, releasing it from his body. A formless earthquake power was controlled by Qin Yun to form a barrier. If he directly released the power of vibration, he could also form a barrier. His opponent's strength was not bad and he could quickly break through it, so it was not practical at all. And the vibration power released through the divine ability was even stronger and more violent. If he could control it and let it flow for a long time, it would be able to play a great defensive role. Come to my side, Qin Yun hurriedly said to Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan hurriedly rushed to Qin Yun's side. At this moment, when the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy attacked with their swords, they were blocked by a vibrating power when they were an inch away from Qin Yun and company. They gripped their swords tightly and stabbed into the invisible barrier bit by bit. However, the vibrating power produced by the barrier caused their swords to tremble crazily, unable to gather any strength. Even their bodies were trembling along with the swords. They were trembling like dogs that were shivering in the cold. "Lend me your strength," Qin Yun said in a deep voice. He was still using his divine ability. Chapter 520. Number 1. Something very strange had happened in the Spirit Formation Martial Field. The seniors watching from outside were all bewildered. They looked at each other. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan were all riddled with wounds and would soon be crippled. But now, they seemed to be enveloped by a strange barrier that was difficult to break through. "It's the vibration martial spirit," a knowledgeable old man exclaimed. "That's the power of vibration. Qin Yun actually has the vibration martial spirit. This is a legendary martial spirit. This fellow has hidden his strength so deeply. Isn't his martial spirit the thunder martial spirit? That's impossible, right? Even with the vibration martial spirit, it is difficult to achieve this. Only a martial artist of the spirit martial realm can have such a powerful vibration shield." That's right, Qin Yun must have some tricks up his sleeves. The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy had an ugly expression as he asked angrily, "Qin Yun, what did you do?" "What I did has nothing to do with you," Qin Yun replied very bluntly. With Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan's endless supply of energy, Qin Yun could last until the end of an incense stick of time. Now, the light pattern equipment on their bodies was also healing their injuries. "Elders, Qin Yun must have used other tricks. We must punish them. This is breaking the rules." The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy hurriedly looked at the elders in golden robes and said angrily, "Tell me, what tricks did they use?" Dao Fan asked coldly, "If you can't say it, you're slandering me." "I don't care." In short, Qin Yun violated the rules. The old man shouted furiously. Xiong Dao said expressionlessly, "If you are unconvinced, you can invite the other 4 hall masters over and let them verify if Qin Yun has violated the rules." The hall masters of the Inscription Hall, Medicine Hall, Elders Hall and Sword Hall rarely show their faces. Especially the hall master of the Hall of Elders, who was the Villa Master of Saber Sword Villa. You. The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy didn't know how to deal with him. Xiong Dao was the hall master of the Saber Hall. This was Xiong Dao's territory. Even those elders had to listen to Xiong Dao's words. Qin Yun now knows the importance of numbers. If they had 10 people, they wouldn't be covered in injuries. Time passed slowly. The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy looked on with unwillingness and anger. The 10 white-clothed middle-aged swordsmen kept hacking and stabbing with their swords. But none of them could break through that powerful vibration barrier. Even Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling were shocked. They knew that Qin Yun had the Thunder Fire martial spirit, but for him to release such a powerful vibration force, he must have the vibration martial spirit. Qin Yun had 3 Dao cores. Together with Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan's, he had the energy of 5 Dao cores. It was enough for them to last for a long time. Big sister, second sister, take this opportunity to clearly see the faces of these 10 guys. If you meet them outside in the future, make them die miserably. Qin Yun's cold words are filled with anger. I've already remembered it. Their ugly faces have already been deeply imprinted in my mind. Tian Ruling's voice was filled with killing intent and coldness. Even though they were separated by a barrier, it made the people outside feel terrified. Only by killing them can we erase their ugly faces from our minds. Yu Wulan thought back to how badly the 3 of them had been besieged and was infuriated to the extreme. No one would doubt their words because they dared to kill the people of the Long and Yang families. At this moment, a wave of fear filled the hearts of the 10 disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy. They had originally thought that this attack would be able to cripple Qin Yun and company and eliminate all future troubles. However, they never expected that the 3 of them would be able to hold on until now. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan were all ruthless characters. If they could survive this month, when it was their turn to attack, they would definitely be extremely ruthless. You don't have to be afraid of them. In the next month, their Dao Fan Academy would have to face 2 attacks every day. There will definitely be one that will be crippled. In a battle of saber and sword attacks, there has never been a successful defense. The old man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy hurriedly encouraged his students to attack with even more effort. Very quickly, the incense stick burned down. Stop! Xiong Dao hurriedly shouted. The faces of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy disciples were filled with unwillingness. Qin Yun and company were brimming with killing intent as they looked at the 10 disciples who had attacked them crazily. All of you, quickly go and heal your injuries. There's still a second match in the afternoon. Dao Fan hurriedly walked over and checked on their injuries. Old Fan, we're only suffering from external injuries. Qin Yun revealed a smile. I'll recover very soon. It's just that I've consumed a lot of energy. Tian Ruling felt warm in her heart when she saw how concerned Dao Fan was for them. Old Fan, we're going back to rest and recuperate. Yu Wulan had also become much more relaxed. The Dao Fan Academy has obtained 8 points. Azure Thunder Sword Academy -8 points. Currently, the Dao Fan Academy is ranked first. Xiong Dao announced loudly with a smile. Dao Fan laughed and said, all of you have worked hard and you have also received a great reward. The Dao Fan Academy was an inferior grade academy. It had successfully defended the upper grade academy and obtained 8 points as a reward. It was normal for it to be ranked first. This was because, under normal circumstances, the upper grade academy rarely attacked the lower grade academy. Even if they did, the lower grade academy had no chance of winning. The people from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy felt very upset as they left the Dao Fan Academy. The Azure Thunder Sword Academy had spent 13 million to snatch the right to choose, but they had failed to attack. They had even lost 8 points and were currently in last place. Qin Yun and company hurriedly returned to the secret chamber to rest. He took out 2 jade vats and allowed Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling to soak in them. Qin Yun had the tree totem and the bloodline of the heavenly lion. He could quickly recover from his injuries. Inside the secret chamber, he was fiddling with things in a flurry. He took out the dragon tendons and burned them with beast oil. Then, he used the 9 Sun Divine Hammer to forge them into a thin film. Then, he tried using a sharp Xian artifact to pierce through the thin film. Although he could pierce through it, it was difficult to penetrate it. It was extremely flexible. If he made it a little thicker and put it on his body, even if he was slashed by a sharp sword, he wouldn't be injured. This had a very good defensive effect. If he wanted to forge armor or something like that, he would need to inscribe spirit inscriptions, which would take a lot of time. Qin Yun quickly refined the dragon tendons until they were as thick as cloth. Then, he wrapped them around the more important parts of his body, blocking the vital points from being attacked. It was fine to be attacked in other places. The main thing was that his heart and Dao core were not pierced. In the afternoon, Qin Yun had also refined many pieces of dragon tendon cloth. He wrapped some of them around a few parts of his body. Although Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling did not know what it was, when they saw that it was refined by Qin Yun, they felt that it was like flour. They wrapped these things around the main parts of their bodies. The second match in the afternoon was finally about to begin. The one attacking was still the high-grade Sword Academy, called the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy. There were a total of 11 people, and they were all middle-aged men dressed in white. In the afternoon, they had also spent more than 10 million purple coins to buy the right to choose the Common Saber Academy. Before every round of attacks, the right to choose would be auctioned off. If one had enough purple coins, they could continuously buy the right to choose and attack the same academy. The Common Saber Academy became even more lively. It was also because Qin Yun and company were able to successfully defend against a high-grade sword academy that they became famous. Some elders and disciples of the Royal Grade Courtyard came to watch. The Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy was one of the top academies in terms of strength. Because they had a lot of people, their strength was slightly stronger than the Azure Thunder Sword Academy. I am the captain of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy. I heard that you guys are very arrogant, so I came to teach you a lesson. A round-faced middle-aged man with a trembling beard said coldly and arrogantly. There are only 3 of us and we are from the lower grade courtyard. The 11 of you have come to teach us a lesson. You really think highly of us. Tian Ruling's tone was filled with ridicule. Is the high-grade Sword Academy as trash as you guys? That's great. When it's our Saber Academy's turn to attack, we will definitely attack the high-grade academy. Qin Yun mocked. The 11 middle-aged men from the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy immediately laughed out loud. It's your turn to attack? You mean next month? You guys are too arrogant. Today you will be crippled by us. The captain of the Sharp Brilliance squad laughed wildly. I really don't understand. You bunch of middle-aged men came to bully us 3 young people, and you actually have a sense of superiority. If it were me, I wouldn't dare to spread this news because it would be too embarrassing. Your skin is so thick. When it's your turn to defend, you will definitely be invincible. Yu Wulan's mocking words caused some of the Royal Grade Courtyard disciples to burst into laughter. Dao Fan also laughed loudly. All of you are at least 50 years old and together, you are more than 500 years old. You are actually so shameless and arrogant in front of 3 brats. The Hall Master of the Saber Hall, Xiong Dao, also laughed loudly. If only the Sword Hall was filled with this kind of trash. Being ridiculed by the Hall Master of the Saber Hall, the dozen or so middle-aged men from the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy were all infuriated. Begin. Xiong Dao shouted. In the morning, Xiong Dao and Dao Fan felt a lot more at ease when they saw that Qin Yun had a powerful vibration barrier. The people of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy. They all felt that Tian Ruling and the other 2 would definitely be easy to deal with since they were severely injured in the morning. After it began, the 11 white-clothed middle-aged men attacked viciously. They were like a pack of wolves as they charged forward. The Royal Grade Spirit swords in their hands stabbed out fiercely. They were all aimed at fatal spots, such as the eyes, mouth, ears, thighs. In order to heavily injure the other party, they had gone all out and shamelessly stabbed. Because they had the protection of the dragon tendon skin, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan only needed to protect their heads and a certain part of their body from being attacked. 11 people were stabbing from all directions. If it was anyone else, they would have been pierced into a beehive. Tian Ruling's body was stabbed dozens of times. Although she felt uncomfortable from the tip of the sword, her body was not pierced. Chapter 521. Increase the reward. The onlookers outside the martial field were all dumbfounded. What kind of armor do they have? How can it be so powerful? It can actually withstand the fierce thrust of a royal-grade spirit weapon. A golden-clothed elder said in shock. Could it be a profound level armor? A middle-aged man in blue had a surprised expression on his face. The people dressed in blue were all from the inscription hall and knew how to forge artifacts. A blue-clothed old man shook his head and said, "If they have a Xian artifact on them, then the power of the Xian inscription will definitely be released and the barrier will be able to detect it." What is that? It looks like a very powerful soft armor. Although the tip of the sword can pierce through, it can't pierce through. The azure-clothed old man from the medicine hall said in surprise. I don't know. They didn't have this type of soft armor in the morning. A golden-clothed elder said. He had also been watching the battle in the morning. This immediately became a mystery, causing many onlookers to speculate. The teacher of the Sharp Brilliance Academy looked at Dao Fan with an ugly expression and said angrily, "Dao Fan, what the hell are they using?" This teacher was a tall and thin old man. When he stood next to Dao Fan, although they were of the same height, their physiques were much different. How would I know? Anyway, it's not against the rules. Dao Fan smiled faintly. Changing the saber and sword attack and defense battle to this extent, isn't it just a competition of equipment? Originally, it was possible to counterattack in a saber and sword battle. Even if one's equipment was poor, they still had a chance to win. As long as they fought back crazily, it was very likely that they would be able to force the attackers to retreat. But now, he could only defend and not counterattack. Naturally, he had to rely on his equipment. Everyone suddenly recalled that Qin Yun had quite a number of Dao and Xian artifacts. Therefore, it was very likely that he possessed a very powerful royal-grade spiritual weapon. The beautiful sabers in Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling's hands were very powerful royal-grade spirit artifacts. This guy Qin Yun is an equipment warehouse. He has many good things. It seems like he picked up a Dao Inscription Master's storage magic tool. He used the Xian artifact to place a bounty on the disciples of the Long and Yang families, causing the people of the two families to panic and worry that they will be crippled. Everyone seemed to be able to see that Qin Yun and the two female devils would go on a killing spree in a month's time. Very quickly, the incense stick burned out. Yu Wulan was in a very good mood. Although her body had been stabbed many times by the tip of the sword, she treated it as a massage. Tian Ruling's face was filled with ridicule. Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy, didn't you just say that you can kill us today? Yu Wulan came to Tian Ruling's side with a charming smile and said, "This group of fellows are already middle-aged and they are still unable to step into the spirit realm. One look and you can tell that they are a bunch of rice buckets. How can their words be taken seriously? It seems like after they entered the Saber Sword Villa, they only know how to brag all day." Qin Yun laughed loudly and said, "I have to say, this group of trash is a bunch of idiots. They actually spent more than 10 million purple coins to choose to attack us. In the end, they still went for wool and came home shorn." The people from the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy were ridiculed by 2 women and a boy in such a manner, but they were extremely angry. Their faces were flushed red, and their foreheads were full of veins. The Common Saber Academy has successfully defended the Upper Grade Academy. You have obtained 8 points. With a total of 16 points, you are currently ranked first. When Xiong Dao saw that the incense had burned out, he shouted loudly. Getting 16 points on the first day of the saber and sword attack and defense competition was unprecedented. Even the second-ranked Sword Academy only got 6 points. It was the Sword Academy where Jian Mang, Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian were. In the morning, they had broken through the defenses of a middle-ranked academy and obtained 4 points. Just now, they had also quickly broken through a lower-ranked academy and obtained 2 points. However, compared to the 3 people from the Common Saber Academy, they were still lacking by quite a bit. If this goes on, this low-rank Common Saber Academy will most likely get first place. If we get first place, we can be promoted to the middle grade academy. Furthermore, we can also obtain the rewards of the 5 great halls and other rewards. A blue-clothed old man said in surprise. Impossible. They still have to defend for a month. That's right, they have just entered the Saber Sword Villa for such a short period of time. If they can obtain such a generous reward, it would be too unfair. The Sword Hall will definitely be able to take them down. Many people were jealous of the Common Saber Academy. They did not want to see the Common Saber Academy obtain first place. The teacher of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy suddenly shouted angrily, "We refuse to accept this. The 3 of them have Xian artifacts protecting their bodies, and our weapons are only royal grade spirit artifacts. We don't have any Xian artifacts on us," Qin Yun said coldly. "What you say doesn't count." The teacher of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy said angrily, "Let the people from the inscription hall come and inspect." An old man from the inscription hall walked over and took out a mirror. He said, "I will use this mirror to shine on your bodies. If you have a Xian artifact, the surface of my mirror will emit a white light. Then hurry up and check." The teachers of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy were extremely unwilling to accept their loss. They had spent tens of millions of purple coins to buy the right to choose. The blue-clothed elder from the inscription hall held a mirror and looked back and forth at Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. Everyone looked at the mirror with rapt attention, but there was no movement at all. "They don't have any Xian artifacts on them." After a round of inspection, the blue-clothed old man said with certainty, "Quick, check their sabers. Their 3 sabers all look very powerful." The teacher of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy was still unwilling to give up. Tian Ruling, Yu Wulan and Qin Yun all took out their sabers. The blue-clothed elder used the mirror to look at it. At the same time, he carefully observed the inscriptions on the blade, causing his face to be filled with shock. "Did you discover something?" When the teacher saw the blue-clothed elder's expression, he asked in pleasant surprise. The blue-clothed elder was an inscription master. He was very surprised to discover that there were star runes on the blade. This is a very powerful royal-grade spirit weapon. There are ancient star runes carved on it. The technique is very brilliant and the precision is very high. The blue-clothed elder placed his eyes on the cold cloud saber's blade and said with a trembling voice, "Ancient star runes were extremely precious runes to every power. Where did you snatch this from? Speak." The teacher of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy immediately asked with a face full of greed. "None of your business," Tian Ruling immediately shouted angrily. Her beautiful eyes flickered with a cold light as she released a cold, killing intent that enveloped the teacher's body. The cold cloud saber in her hand was overflowing with a cold white gas. Tian Ruling now understood. The reason why Qin Yun hid the fact that he was an inscription master was because he had ancient star runes. Now, the ancient star runes had been exposed. Tian Ruling was worried that Qin Yun would be alarmed because of this. That was why she was so angry. She wished that she could kill that teacher. "My students are all very tired. If there's nothing else, all of you can scram." Dao Fan was no longer courteous. His face was filled with anger as he held a Xian saber that was emitting a black aura. "Little Yun, let's go in and rest." Yu Wulan hurriedly pulled Qin Yun into the house. Tian Ruling followed behind. Qin Yun was their little brother, so they naturally had to protect him. The Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy had only earned 2 points in the morning and lost 8 points in the afternoon. Now they were also in the negative. Even 2 high-grade academies were unable to break through the low-grade Dao Fan Academy. One had to know that there were only 3 people in the Dao Fan Academy. Saber Sword Villa, Eastern District, was the area where all the sword academies of the Sword Hall were located. In one of the brand-new courtyards, Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian were both there. They were looking at Jian Mang, who was drinking tea. Jian Mang, should we buy the option to attack the Dao Fan Academy tomorrow? Long Wuchen asked coldly. With your strength, you should be able to break through their defenses. As long as we cripple the three of them, each of us will be able to obtain 20 million purple coins. When Yang Mutian recalled how he had knelt to Qin Yun, his expression gradually turned sinister. He wished that he could tear Qin Yun and Tian Ruling into 1,000 pieces. Then I might as well kill you and Long Wuchen. After obtaining 2 Xian artifacts and selling them, I might be able to get hundreds of millions of purple coins. Jian Meng chuckled. Jian Meng, I admit that you have some strength, but if you want to kill us, aren't you being too arrogant? Long Wuchen said with some dissatisfaction. I'm not afraid of offending the Long and Yang families. Jian Meng smiled calmly. You guys are not well informed at all. Don't you know that the patriarchs of the Long and Yang families have been offered a bounty by Qin Yun with a Dao artifact? The youths here were all moved. Using a Dao artifact to place a bounty on the patriarchs of the two families was extremely valuable. That's impossible. Who would help him issue a bounty? Yang Mutian immediately shouted. It was issued by Demon Moon Island. I believe that soon, Qin Yun will use a Xian artifact to place a bounty on the heads of the disciples of your two families. At that time, Jian Meng drank his tea and said with a mocking expression. Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian's expressions changed. They finally felt threatened. The reason why the disciples of Saber Sword Villa did not dare to attack them was because their elders were in the villa. If they went outside, it might not be the case. The Spirit Desolate was so big, there would definitely be some people who were not afraid of death. In order to obtain a Xian artifact, they would hunt them down. Do you know fear now? Ha ha! Jian Meng laughed loudly. Tomorrow we will attack the Common Saber Academy. Long Wuchen said coldly. Up to you. Anyway, I won't make a move when the time comes. Jian Meng crossed his legs. I'd rather offend you than offend Qin Yun. Although I'm blind, my heart is not blind. But my heart is not blind. Qin Yun is a good person, moreover, he is also very scary. Although Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian did not want to admit it, they knew in their hearts that Jian Meng was a very powerful sword cultivator. With his origin sword, he could kill a spirit realm cultivator. If their team did not have Jian Meng, they would not have been able to break through Qin Yun and company's defenses. Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian hurriedly left the courtyard. They wanted to find the elder that their family had arranged for them to stay here. In the evening, shocking news came from Saber Sword Villa. The Long and Yang families had increased the bounty. As long as they crippled Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan, everyone in that sword academy would receive 100 million purple coins. It was originally 20 million, but now it had increased to 100 million. The news of Qin Yun using a Dao artifact to place a bounty on the heads of the Long and Yang families' patriarchs gradually spread. Chapter 522. Hegemonic Sword. Mysterious Art. At night, Qin Yun walked back and forth in a hall. Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling were quietly drinking tea. Late at night, Hu Jingxian, who was wearing a white dress and a white veil, came. In the evening, Qin Yun found out that the Long and Yang families had increased the bounty on them. They were determined to cripple them here. Elder Fox, it's so late. I've really troubled you. Qin Yun contacted the nearby Hu Jingxian through Xiong Dao. I have already released the bounty order that you entrusted me with. Hu Jingxian smiled lightly. The effect should be quite good. I want to increase the bounty. If you obtain the head of the Long or Yang family, you will be able to obtain 2 Dao tools, both ancient Dao tools. After Qin Yun finished speaking, he took out 4 Dao tools. They were all weapons, sabers, swords and spears. Hu Jingxian looked at the 4 Dao artifact. She was very surprised. She was charming and charming. After careful inspection, she was sure that it was an ancient Dao tool. Alright. I will act overnight and guarantee that this matter will spread throughout the proud star state by tomorrow morning. After Hu Jingxian finished speaking, she immediately left. Qin Yun also knows that it will not be easy to kill the two patriarchs. He did this to let the Long and Yang families know that he, Qin Yun, is not easy to bully. Also, he had to make these two great families fall into the fear of having a bounty on their heads. It had to be said that Hu Jingxian moved very quickly. Through the space communication talisman, they used the information dissemination channel of Demon Moon Island. Within a single night, the bounty was posted in many major cities. After dawn, many of the disciples of Saber Sword Villa were shocked. Last night, he was surprised that the Long and Yang families were rich and overbearing, increasing the bounty on Qin Yun, Tian Ruling, and Yu Wulan. When they woke up early in the morning, they learned that Qin Yun had also increased the bounty, using 4 Dao artifacts to place a bounty on the heads of the two patriarchs. Furthermore, they were all ancient Dao artifacts. This was the news released by Demon Moon Island. Furthermore, this Dao artifact had been verified by the elders of Demon Moon Island. It was an ancient Dao artifact. The runes inside the ancient Dao tools are all ancient runes. Therefore, they are a bit better than many of the current Dao tools. Moreover, it has great research significance. Many Dao inscription masters want to collect it. If a Dao inscription master fancied something, then they would do their utmost to obtain it. And the most maddening thing is that Qin Yun also increased the bounty on the disciples of the Long and Yang families. As long as they cripple a disciple of the Long family or the Yang family during the battle, they would be able to obtain 2 profound armaments. Everyone originally thought that Qin Yun would have a hard time after offending the Long and Yang family of the 5 great clans. But now, it seemed that the days of the Long family and the Yang family were not going to be good. The consequences of offending Qin Yun are also very serious. This was the effect that Qin Yun wanted. It was to make the Yang and Long families feel fear. The arrival of a new day meant that the offensive and defensive battle had entered the second day. In the morning, it was another round of defensive battle. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling, and Yu Wulan were dressed in black and looked extremely spirited as they stood in the spirit formation martial field. They looked at the gate of the courtyard, waiting for the Sword Academy to attack today. Not long after, a group of people in white appeared. The Sword Academy that came was called the Heavenly Sword Academy. There were a total of 8 people and they all looked middle-aged. The Heavenly Sword Academy was a high-grade academy. It would take a long time to go from a low-grade academy to a high-grade academy. Some would even take over 100 years and it would be extremely difficult. If they were unable to step into the spirit realm for over 100 years, they would gradually become middle-aged. The number of people who came to watch this morning was even more than yesterday afternoon. It was mainly the people from the inscription hall, the medicine hall and the elders' hall. Especially the people from the elders' hall. The elders of the Long and Yang families were here. They were 2 old men with wrinkled faces. The moment they entered, they looked at Tian Ruling, Qin Yun and Yu Wulan with their old eyes that were filled with killing intent. The Heavenly Sword Academy is a quasi-royal grade academy because there is a martial master among them. Dao Fan said in a low voice. Among them, there is a person called Long Yufan who has just stepped into the spirit realm. A sword academy with a martial master was indeed very strong. Qin Yun said, a martial master who has just stepped into the spirit realm, there's no need to be afraid of him. We will definitely be able to defend. Within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the 3 of them would be defeated. Only then would the attack be considered successful. Within the Heavenly Sword Academy, there was a middle-aged man with a square face that was filled with arrogance. With a single glance, one could tell that he was Long Yufan. You 3 bastards killed a disciple of our Long family. Today I, a member of the Long family, will end all of you. As Long Yufan's cold voice fell, a terrifying dragon might surged out from his body. Dragon blood inheritance. Qin Yun was secretly alarmed, but he was not afraid at all. No matter how strong the dragon blood inheritance was, it did not have a totem to complement it. If he did not know how to use it, the power he could unleash would be extremely limited. You bastard, clean your mouth! Tian Ruling was immediately infuriated. Tian Ruling, you Wulan, you two bitches. In order to obtain Qin Yun's Dao artifact, you did not hesitate to sell your bodies and collude with him. Long Yufan sneered. Nonsense, your Long family must be jealous of our Yu and Tian families. Yu Wulan laughed tenderly. Long Yufan, you are such a pitiful fellow. Even if you become a martial master, you don't even have a Dao artifact. Tian Ruling sneered. Long Yufan, if you want a Dao artifact, I can give you a clear path. That is to chop off the head of your patriarch and hand it over to us. Right. Kill your patriarch and you will be able to obtain 2 ancient Dao artifacts. Yu Wulan giggled. Hurry up and go. Don't waste time here. If you're slow, your patriarch might be killed by someone else. This angered Long Yufan so much that his face turned gloomy and the corner of his eyes twitched. A golden-robed elder shouted, Yufan, wait for them to repay us. When Long Yufan thought about how it would be his turn to attack, he immediately calmed down. Tian Ruling, since you are so confident that you can withstand our attack, do you want to bet something with us? After Long Yufan suppressed the anger in his heart, he looked at the beautiful white cold cloud saber. I'm too lazy to bet with you. The previous Yang Mutian was a guy who couldn't afford to lose. You guys are probably all the same. Yu Wulan snorted lightly. If you are willing to bet, we can hand the bet over to Xiong Dao. As long as we win, we can take the chips from him. The Long family's golden-robed elder said. Obviously, the people from the Long family had already discussed this. They wanted to win something in this round of attacks. What do you want to bet? Qin Yun asked. Bet your ancient Dao artifact. If you can't defend, then you lose. Give us an ancient Dao artifact. Long Yufan's eyes flashed with excitement, as if they were about to win. What if your attack fails? Tian Ruling asked. I am a martial master, how could I lose to you? Ha ha ha. Long Yufan laughed loudly and said, if we really lose, I'll give you 100 million purple coins. 100 million purple coins? Qin Yun smiled. Do you think I'm an idiot? Cut the crap, let's start the attack and defense. 500 million. The Long family's elder hurriedly shouted. Qin Yun remained indifferent. 1 billion. The Long family's elder shouted again. 5 billion. Qin Yun said with a sneer. Aren't you very confident that you can win? Are you not even willing to pay 5 billion? Although Qin Yun had obtained more than 7 billion purple crystal coins, he had used up more than half of it. He still had about 3 billion left. 5 billion it is. The elder from the Long family clenched his teeth. Qin Yun took out an ancient Dao artifact sword and handed it to Xiong Dao. The Long family's elder also took out a purple crystal card and passed 5 billion purple crystal coins to Xiong Dao. Everyone's eyes were glued to that Dao artifact. The elders here were at most at the peak of the spirit martial realm, and they all yearned for a Dao artifact. Their saber sword villa originally had Dao inscription masters, but they had all gone to the immortal sect. Even if there were Dao inscription masters, it would be difficult for them to obtain a Dao artifact. The purple coins in Qin Yun's hands were a lot to many people, but he felt that it was not enough. In the future, if he were to buy some materials or activate some great formation, it would be consumed very quickly. Therefore, if he had the chance, he would have to fish for some purple coins. Many people looked at the elder of the Long family enviously. Long Yufan was a martial master of the spirit martial realm. With him here, he would definitely beat Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan to the ground. Xiong Dao was also worried that Qin Yun and company would lose. Begin! Xiong Dao shouted. In the Heavenly Sword Academy, Long Yufan was like a boss. The others also listened to his commands. There were a total of 8 of them, and now, they were focusing their attacks on Tian Ruling. Long Yufan indeed had his own method. He did not split up to attack the 3 of them, but instead focused his fire on Tian Ruling. They wanted to defeat them one by one. Qin Yun and Yu Wulan naturally would not let them succeed. They hurriedly came to Tian Ruling's side to share the pressure. Long Yufan shouted angrily, "Then I'll cripple all of you!" As he spoke, the sword in his hand suddenly overflowed with a purplish gold glow. It's the sword martial spirit attached to the sword. Long Yufan has the purple gold sword martial spirit. He is destined to cultivate the Tao of the sword. The power of the sword Tao is indeed terrifying. I can even feel it through the barrier. He's using primordial Tao energy. It's the Tyrant Sword mysterious technique. When everyone saw the sword in Long Yufan's hand suddenly become incomparably huge as it fiercely slashed at Qin Yun and company, they could not help but burst into an uproar. A mysterious technique that used a martial spirit to fight, combined with primordial Tao energy, was the most terrifying. "All of you lie down, ha 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 ha." Long Yufan's loud laughter was filled with arrogance and complacency. The purplish gold greatsword in his hand, which was more than 10 meters long, fiercely slashed at Qin Yun as he laughed maniacally. Qin Yun's expression was solemn as he frowned and hurriedly used his Earthquake Divine ability. He activated the powerful Vibration Divine ability power and controlled it to form a barrier that enveloped the 3 of them. Facing Long Yufan's attack, the dragon tendon skin on their bodies was unable to withstand it. Boom! The greatsword slashed down, purple gold light shot out in all directions, and a wave of energy surged. The whistling sound and the crisp cry of the sword echoed in the air. Everyone was incomparably alarmed as they looked at Qin Yun. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, his eyes and the skin on his face. Chapter 523. Moon of Vengeance. Long Yufan, who was laughing maniacally, roared angrily when he saw that Qin Yun had not been knocked down. Once again, he used the Tyrant Sword mysterious technique, transforming it into a large sword that slashed at Qin Yun and company. "You 3 dogs, I will cripple you." Long Yufan was very easily angered. This might have something to do with the cultivation technique he cultivated. Boom! Boom! Long Yufan released all of his power and used the Tyrant Sword mysterious technique with all his might. He slashed at Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. The power of the Tyrant Sword mysterious technique was indeed terrifying. It could produce a very strong force that bombarded the vibration barrier and injured Qin Yun. After dozens of slashes, Long Yufan was panting and his face was deathly pale. Qin Yun's entire body was cracked, but he still stood there, releasing the earthquake barrier without moving an inch. His body had been tempered by the power of the 9 suns and could accommodate 3 Tao cores. It was extremely powerful. The strength of his body was not weaker than a martial master's. When Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan saw Qin Yun's bloody appearance, their hearts ached. They were all channeling energy to Qin Yun and maintaining the vibration barrier together. "Long Yufan, I will kill you." Tian Ruling gripped her cold cloud saber tightly as her entire body trembled. She wished that she could rush over and kill Long Yufan with a single slash. "If you have the guts, come at me. If your defense dares to retaliate, even if we kill you, there will be no consequences. Furthermore, all of your points will belong to us." Long Yufan laughed loudly and said, "You bastards, quickly come and kill me." The other 7 people also rushed over and used their strongest strength to crazily hack at the vibration barrier. Everyone could not help but exclaim in admiration at how terrifying Qin Yun's vibration barrier was. Long Yufan's expression gradually turned serious. If they were unable to win, not only would they lose 8 points, their Long family would also lose one. 5 billion purple coins. Long Yufan, quickly defeat them. The Long family's elder was extremely anxious as he shouted loudly. Long Yufan's dozens of attacks had almost consumed all of his energy. He thought that he could weaken Qin Yun's vibration barrier, but now, the 7 middle-aged men were unable to break through it no matter how hard they slashed at it. Ha ha ha! Qin Yun suddenly laughed out loud. Long family, you have been completely defeated this time. 1.5 billion purple crystal coins are mine. Look at all of you are as anxious as monkeys, but what can you do? Although Qin Yun's body is covered in blood, he still seems to be very strong. When Tian Ruling saw that Qin Yun was still in high spirits, she felt a lot more at ease. Qin Yun was only physically injured. His powerful body has been tempered for a long time. Inside the Nether Sun Dao core, there is also the tree totem releasing life force that can quickly help him heal his injuries. As long as he was given time to recover, his body would almost be indestructible. Long Yufan was extremely nervous, his expression was extremely ugly, and he did not dare to look at the elder of the Long family. Previously, they had been brimming with confidence, but now their expressions were very interesting. Anger, anxiety, despair. Very quickly, the incense stick burned out. The Common Saber Academy has won. They have obtained 8 points and a middle score of 24. They are temporarily ranked first. Xiong Dao was also extremely happy as he shouted. The faces of the people of the Heavenly Sword Academy were extremely ugly. Yesterday, they had painstakingly attacked for 2 rounds and only managed to get 4 points. Today they had lost 8 points. The Heavenly Sword Academy also became a Sword Academy with a negative score. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan supported Qin Yun and checked his injuries. I'm fine. Qin Yun wiped his face and revealed a smile. Xiong Dao walked over and gave the ancient Dao sword and won 5 billion purple coins to Qin Yun. Everyone sighed. With only 3 people, the Common Saber Academy had successfully defended against the attack of the upper-grade academy. Even a martial master like Long Yufan, who knew Xian arts, was unable to break through Qin Yun's vibration barrier. In other words, even if the other academies attacked again, it would be useless. This matter shook the entire Saber Sword Villa. In a row, 3 high-grade sword academies were unable to take down a low-grade Saber Academy. This caused the entire Sword Hall to feel incomparably humiliated. As for the Long family, they were the most depressed. They had lost 1.5 billion purple coins. Qin Yun hurriedly returned to the secret chamber to rest and recuperate. If the powerful upper-grade academy were to attack in the afternoon, they would have to endure it. Jianmeng's Sword Academy had just taken down a middle-grade Saber Academy and obtained 4 points. Their score was ranked second. However, second place was useless. Only first place would be rewarded. After Jianmeng and company finished fighting, they were shocked when they found out about the news from the Common Saber Academy. This martial master, Long Yufan, is unable to take down Qin Yun even after using the Tyrant Sword Mysterious technique. Even if I were to go, the result would be the same. Jianmeng sighed. Then, he looked at Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian and said, You two be careful. If it's the Saber Academy's turn to attack our Sword Academy next month, you two will definitely be his target. I, Long Wuchen, have never been afraid of him. On the other hand, you are actually so cowardly that you don't dare to provoke Qin Yun. Long Wuchen sneered. He was truly not afraid of Qin Yun at all. This was because in his heart, Qin Yun was still a person with a one-sun spirit vein. He was an existence akin to trash. Jianmeng shook his head. He only hoped that Yang Mutian and Long Wuchen would leave his academy as soon as possible. That way, they would not be attacked by Qin Yun. In the afternoon, The one attacking the Common Saber Academy was no longer the high-grade Sword Academy but the low-grade Sword Academy. 3 consecutive high-grade Sword Academies were unable to attack the Common Saber Academy. No Sword Academy tried again because once they lost, they would lose 8 points. For the high-grade Sword Academy, they would need to take down 4 high-grade Saber Academies in order to catch up. This would take 2 days. Qin Yun and company defending against the attacks of the low-grade Sword Academy was a very easy task. There was no difficulty at all. Previously, many Sword Academies were fighting to be the first to attack the Common Saber Academy. But now, none of the Sword Academies wanted to choose the Common Saber Academy. However, in every round of attacks, there would always be an unlucky Sword Academy that had no choice but to attack the Common Saber Academy. Although there were only 3 people in the Common Saber Academy, they were currently ranked first in terms of points. Everyone suddenly felt that this sword and saber attack and defense battle was simply created for the sake of the Common Saber Academy. This was because Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan's defenses were too strong. Not to mention that there were many good pieces of equipment, there were also very evil cultivation techniques that could release a very strong vibrating power to form a protective barrier. Those who had attacked the Common Saber Academy had all seen the sabers in the hands of Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. They were both extremely powerful royal-grade spirit weapons. Even the Spirit Realm martial masters with Xian artifacts felt that those 2 sabers were much stronger than Xian artifact. This was indeed the case because the Cold Cloud Saber and the Willow Moon Saber were refined using very good Xian artifact materials and had even been forged by the 9 Sun Divine Hammer. In terms of strength, it had indeed surpassed many ordinary Xian artifacts. Very quickly, a month had passed. In the ranking of the Saber Sword Attack and Defense Battle, the Common Saber Academy was ranked first with 166 points. In the following month, it was the Saber Hall's turn to attack. This was something that many people were very worried about. This was because the combat strength of the Common Saber Academy was very strong, especially Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. They all had very good weapons in their hands. At night, Qin Yun sat in the hall drinking tea. Tian Ruling was wiping her Cold Cloud Saber. Tomorrow is our turn to attack. The Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy, the Azure Thunder Sword Academy and the Heavenly Sword Academy. Which academy should we attack first? Yu Wulan's jade-like face was filled with a joyful smile. Tian Ruling looked at Qin Yun and said, "Little Yun, you decide. We'll fight the Heavenly Sword Academy in the morning and the Azure Thunder Sword Academy in the afternoon." Qin Yun said, "The Heavenly Sword Academy has a martial master from the Long family. We have to get rid of him quickly in case he runs away. These bastards from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy, they beat us up so badly back then. Now it's their turn to return the favor." Tian Ruling looked at the sharp blade and said with a cold expression. Yu Wulan frowned slightly and said, "Will they run away? I don't think so. Right now, no one can leave the Saber Sword Villa. If anyone is absent from the Saber Sword attack and defense competition, they will be severely punished. They might even be imprisoned and tortured." Qin Yun had asked Xiong Dao earlier. Next, they could attack the Sword Academy without worry. Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian are in the same academy as Jianmang. Should we attack? Yu Wulan said, "This Jianmang is not easy to deal with. As long as we don't deal with Jianmang, our main targets are Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian." Qin Yun said, "So what if we don't deal with Jianmang and let them win by 2 points? We have a lot of points." Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian, their doomsday has arrived. A sneer appeared on Tian Ruling's beautiful face. She had been bullied by the Long and Yang families, but she hated the arrogant disciples of the Long and Yang families to the bone. At daybreak, there was a plaza in the area where the Saber Hall was located. All the Saber Academies were gathered in the plaza today. They were preparing to draw lots and get a number. According to the number, they would choose the sword academies they wanted to attack. When Tian Ruling, Yu Wulan and Qin Yun arrived, they immediately became the focus of attention. In the past month, their reputation had caused many sword academies to tremble in fear. One had to know that the Saber Hall was at the bottom of the Saber Sword Villa. And now, the Common Saber Academy had crushed many sword academies, causing many of the teachers and disciples of the Saber Academy to feel extremely excited. Now, it was finally the turn of the Saber Hall to attack the Sword Hall. The disciples of the Royal Grade Courtyard, the people from the Medicine Hall and the Inscription Hall had also arrived at the plaza of the Saber Hall early in the morning. They wanted to see which sword academy they would attack first. Everyone wanted to see how the Common Saber Academy would attack the Sword Academy with their own eyes, because the process would definitely be very exciting. This month was also known as the Saber Hall's Month of Revenge. Previously, many disciples of the Saber Hall had been injured and bullied by the Sword Academy. Now, it was finally the Saber Hall's turn to attack. Let's start the auction for the first choice. 1 million. Xiong Dao shouted. 2 million. Qin Yun's calm voice suddenly sounded. Buying the first choice was just to get rid of the enemy faster. Qin Yun had won 5 billion purple coins from the Long family previously, so he did not feel any heartache at all. Many people from the Saber Academy knew that Qin Yun and company were eager for revenge. Furthermore, the Common Saber Academy had fought for the Saber Hall, so no one bid against them. In fact, many of the disciples of the Saber Academy were the poorer ones. Generally speaking, disciples who used swords mostly came from large families. Every time they passed the examination, they would use swords more than sabers. There were more disciples in every sword academy than in the Saber Academy. In this aspect, the Saber Academy was at a disadvantage. Chapter 524. Hall Master of Sword Hall. The Common Saber Academy bought the first choice very smoothly. The disciples of the Saber Hall all felt extremely regretful because they were unable to watch the battle at the Common Saber Academy. Many of the Saber Hall disciples present were covered in wounds. Those who had been injured during the defensive battle had now affected their attack on the training hall. Thinking of this, the disciples of the Hall of Saber felt that they were at a disadvantage, but there was nothing they could do. As for the training hall disciples, they were in excellent condition. It was very easy for them to fend off a large group of injured Saber Hall disciples. Everyone felt that the elders of the Saber Sword Villa were obviously biased towards the Sword Hall. Common Saber Academy, which Sword Academy are you going to attack? Xiong Dao asked. Heavenly Sword Academy. Tian Ruling shouted. Everyone was moved. The first battle was against the Heavenly Sword Academy, which had a Spirit Martial Realm Martial Master. If they could really defeat the Heavenly Sword Academy, then all the high-grade sword academies in the Sword Hall would definitely not be able to withstand the Common Saber Academy. Alright, you can go now. Xiong Dao couldn't go either, because he still had to make arrangements for the Saber Academy's attack. Dao Fan walked in front and was secretly excited. During this period of time, he was well aware of the strength of Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. If coupled with a powerful saber, it would not be difficult to break through the Heavenly Sword Academy. Behind Qin Yun and company, there was a large group of people filled with anticipation. They were all a group of people who were watching the show. They were also a special group of people in the Saber Sword Villa. The Elixir Hall's main job was to concoct pills and grow herbs. They definitely wouldn't participate in this kind of fighting and killing. The Inscription Hall was responsible for setting up formations, refining talismans, and other things related to inscriptions. They did not participate in the battle. The disciples of the Royal Grade Courtyard were the backbone of the Saber Sword Villa. He specialized in helping the Inscription Hall and the Medicine Hall do things, such as collecting materials and so on. Usually, he would leave a group of royal courtyard disciples to guard this place. The elders of the Hall of Elders were a group of stewards. Because of the offensive and defensive battles, they were relatively idle. The Heavenly Sword Academy was very imposing. The buildings were all brand new and they were also very big. There were actually small lakes, fake mountains, and 9 zigzag bridges inside. The martial field here was also 100 meters wide. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling, and Yu Wulan had long known that the high-grade courtyard was relatively luxurious. But after seeing it with their own eyes, they realized how shabby their own inferior-grade courtyard was. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Sword Hall's Hall Master is here." The Hall Master of the Sword Hall was actually a youth. Qin Yun was somewhat alarmed. He was also the Hall Master of the Sword Hall. His name was Jian Lang, and he was a member of the Jian family. Jian Lang was 1.7 meters tall with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He looked very young and inexperienced. He wore a purple gold jade crown on his head and was dressed in luxurious white clothes. A beautiful purple gold scabbard hung from his waist. From the beginning to the end, he gave people the feeling that he was very exaggerated and extravagant. The most impressive thing was that he wore a sword-shaped earring on his left ear. "You are Qin Yun? You have the ancient Dao sword?" Jian Lang's voice was calm. He did not have the slightest bit of aura on him, and he could not sense his aura either. The Hall Master of the Sword Hall indeed gave off a very strong and mysterious feeling. Qin Yun replied, "Our Sword Hall lost a lot of points in your Common Saber Academy. Rumor has it that your Common Saber Academy is preparing to massacre our Sword Hall, right?" Jian Lang asked slowly. "I won't go so far as to massacre you, but I want to let your Sword Hall know that if you want to cripple us and obtain the bounty, you will have to pay the price." Tian Ruling said coldly, "If I cripple the 3 of you, I will be able to get 100 million purple coins. Since you have offered such a high price for your bounty, it can be seen that you have the strength." "Qin Yun, did you use the ancient Dao sword as the bounty for the heads of the Long and Yang families' patriarchs?" Jian Lang asked curiously. Jian Lang was at the spirit martial realm. To him, a Dao artifact was very attractive. "Sword, saber, spear, armor, you can choose any 2. Qin Yun smiled. "The premise is that you can bring the head to me." Everyone secretly took a deep breath and felt that Jian Lang had that kind of intention. "I'm just asking, I'm not trying to kill the 2 patriarchs," Jian Lang said with a smile. The Long family's elder and Long Yufan immediately felt relieved. The Sword Hall Master has an origin sword. He doesn't care about those Dao artifacts. The Long family elder sneered. "Not necessarily. The ancient Dao sword might have the legendary sword runes. I need this kind of thing." Jian Lang looked at Qin Yun and asked, "Can you let me see your ancient Dao sword?" Qin Yun was also very generous. He took out the ancient Dao sword and handed it to Jian Lang. Then, he asked, "Sword Hall Master, I also saw the Jian family disciples participating in the assessment. Why didn't you let them directly enter the Sword Hall?" "The disciples of our Jian family rely on their own abilities to roam the spirit desolate. We never rely on the powers behind us." Jian Lang carefully looked at the ancient Dao sword and said with a sigh, "There are no sword runes." He returned the sword to Qin Yun. "If there were sword runes, would you kill the patriarchs of the Long and Yang families?" Qin Yun asked after keeping the ancient Dao sword. Everyone immediately looked at Jian Lang and held their breaths as they waited for his answer. "Yes," Jian Lang said with a smile, "but sword runes are only legendary existences. They have never appeared in the spirit desolate. Even if they did appear, they might have been hidden by someone. Let's not talk anymore, prepare to begin." As Jian Lang spoke, he also left the spirit formation martial field. The Heavenly Sword Academy was led by Long Yufan and 8 middle-aged men. They held swords in their hands and wore armor as they walked out of a pavilion. When they saw Qin Yun and the two beautiful women appear, they felt surprised and at the same time secretly jealous of Qin Yun. Yu Wulan was one of the 5 great beauties of the proud star state that had been selected by the divine inscription palace. No one knew exactly how they were selected. In short, many women wanted this title. Now, Yu Wulan and Tian Ruling were in the same saber academy as Qin Yun. Even if nothing happened to them, outsiders would still have their imaginations run wild. I really didn't expect that you 3 dogs would come to us in the first round. You spent a lot of money to buy the right to choose, right? Long Yufan said with a sneer. I'm afraid you guys are going to waste those purple coins. When Tian Ruling heard the words dog couple, her expression changed. She immediately turned cold and filled with killing intent. Qin Yun was rather calm because he would be able to teach Long Yufan a lesson in a moment. We only used 2 million purple coins. In any case, your Long family lost one. 5 billion to me. Qin Yun said with a laugh. Thank you for the purple coins your Long family gifted me. Yu Wulan looked at a golden-clothed elder of the Long family and said with a smile, Elder of the Long family, do you want to win the ancient Dao tool and the 1.5 billion purple coins? What, you want to bet with us? The elder of the Long family asked with a cold expression. I do want to, but I'm afraid you won't be able to afford it. Yu Wulan smiled charmingly and proudly. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. You've already lost 1.5 billion, what else can you bet with us? The elder of the Long family was immediately infuriated. He wanted to say something but he couldn't. He had lost 1.5 billion and was also blamed by the Long family. You're even one of the 5 great clans. A bunch of poor bastards. After losing 1.5 billion, you've completely withered away. Yu Wulan's light laughter was filled with contempt. Jian Lang began the barrier and shouted, Begin! The martial field was a 100-meter wide circle. It was extremely spacious. The 8 middle-aged men from the Heavenly Sword Academy immediately spread out in 8 different directions. As a result, Qin Yun and company would need to defeat them one by one. This would take a lot of time. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, as long as one person from the Heavenly Sword Academy was still standing, it would be considered a success. Big sister, second sister, leave Long Yufan to me. Qin Yun smiled calmly and said, The Hall Master of the Sword Hall is watching. You must treat the disciples of the Sword Hall with gentleness. Tian Ruling sneered. That smile was filled with killing intent. She charged at a short and fat middle-aged man, brandished the cold cloud saber in her hand and slashed down violently. The long and large cold cloud saber slashed down, releasing an incomparably strong ice-cold power. Immediately, the short and fat middle-aged man's entire body was covered in frost. Clang! The short and fat middle-aged man held his sword horizontally to block the ice-cold broadsword. The sword was very thin. Compared to the cold cloud saber, it was incomparably stingy. With a dang sound, a crack actually appeared on the blade. Tian Ruling had only used a single slash to create a gap in the sword. The most frightening thing was that the cold cloud saber could absorb the inner force of the short and fat middle-aged man through the sword. Tian Ruling did not have any gentleness. She could only describe her attack as brutal. With a few swishes, the short and fat middle-aged man's arms were cut off. The snow-white saber stabbed into the middle-aged man's abdomen. The white saber went in and the red saber came out. After a few moves, the short and fat middle-aged man fell to the ground in a half-dead state. The armor they were wearing was completely useless. It was easily broken through like paper. Yu Wulan's side was about the same. When her slender willow moon saber slashed down, it released a dizzying power, causing the tall middle-aged man to fall into a temporary state of dizziness. In a state of dizziness, the tall middle-aged man was unable to circulate the energy in his body to defend himself. Therefore, Yu Wulan was able to easily break through the middle-aged man's armor and gracefully slashed with the Willow Moon saber. The Willow Moon saber slashed across the tall middle-aged man's body, bringing with it streams of blood that splattered across the martial field. It was sad and bloody. Hall Master, if this continues, our geniuses will be crippled. Quickly help them. The teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy pleaded with a bitter face. Humph. When you attacked the 3 youths of our Dao Fan Academy, you also wanted to cripple them. Now you have tasted your retribution. Dao Fan sneered. Jian Lang slowly said, those who are crippled in a battle of saber and sword attacks are not considered geniuses. His words caused the face of the teacher from the Heavenly Sword Academy to turn ashen. Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan quickly crippled a middle-aged man, and continued to attack the next one. The remaining middle-aged men all had faces full of fear as they leaped up and down the martial field. Qin Yun held a black saber as he slowly walked towards Long Yufan. Long Yufan watched as his teammate fell, but he remained calm. Chapter 525. The first battle of revenge. Generally speaking, it would be difficult for someone at the 9th level of the martial Dao to defeat a martial master of the spirit martial realm. However, in a battle of swords and sabers, the defending side could not retaliate and could only be constantly attacked by the opponent. Therefore, if they met a powerful 9th level martial Dao cultivator, a martial master was not completely invincible. Everyone felt that if Qin Yun did not rely on a Dao artifact, his attack power would be very ordinary. Even if he had a good royal-grade spirit weapon, it would be difficult to break through Long Yufan's defenses. Qin Yun, you little bastard, come and attack me. Long Yufan laughed out loud and said, not to mention 1 incense stick of time, even if I gave you 2 incense sticks of time, you wouldn't be able to defeat me. Qin Yun did not say a word as he brandished the saber in his hand. He circulated the power of thunder and lightning and poured it into the saber as he slashed at Long Yufan. The saber's aura was very fierce and its speed was not very fast. Although Long Yufan could dodge, he did not. Instead, he brandished his sword to block. He wanted to prove that he was very strong. Boom! When Qin Yun's saber landed on Long Yufan's sword, a terrifying shockwave of thunder exploded out and a shockwave reverberated throughout the spirit formation martial field. Long Yufan's expression changed, but he still said proudly, Humph, your strength is too weak. If I could counterattack, you would have died a long time ago. Qin Yun sheathed his saber and took a few steps back. Ha ha! Your full-strength attack just now posed no threat to me. Long Yufan was incomparably pleased as he laughed loudly. Seeing Long Yufan block Qin Yun's saber, the teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy heaved a sigh of relief. However, the other middle-aged swordsmen found it difficult to withstand the attacks of Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. The attacks of these 2 female berserk demons were incomparably savage. Even the middle-aged swordsmen, who had been at the 9th level of the martial Dao for many years, found it extremely difficult to block. There were 4 middle-aged men lying on the ground. They had all been crippled and their injuries were extremely serious. Of the 8 people from the Heavenly Sword Academy, there were still 4 left. When Long Yufan saw that Qin Yun was about to attack again, he hurriedly circulated the power of the spirit realm and even used the power of his martial spirit to float on his sword. Qin Yun's expression was cold as he took a step forward. The arm of the Heavenly Lion in his left hand gripped the saber tightly. The Heavenly Lion's bloodline boiled in his body. The black thunder fire martial spirit on his arm was engraved with the Heavenly Lion totem. It had fused with the 9 life marks and was crazily absorbing the power of the Dao core. Through the totem martial spirit, he was able to condense a terrifying primordial Dao force. Qin Yun grunted and slashed down with his saber, stirring up a gust of wind accompanied by angry thunder. Rumble! With a thunderous explosion, the large saber landed on Long Yufan's longsword, causing the ground to tremble. Dang! Long Yufan's sword was struck, causing sparks to fly. To his horror, there was a majestic, vibrating force that came crashing toward him. It turned into a terrifying Dao aura that shook his entire body. First style, Wind Cutter. Qin Yun sneered before casting the second move, Wave Breaker. Hua la la, the moment he swung his saber, the surging saber chi was like a stormy sea, accompanied by thunder and lightning. Boom! Qin Yun's saber was like a raging lion breaking through the waves. It let out a deep roar and slashed down. Long Yufan felt that terrifying Dao power and was shocked to the extreme. He wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Ah! Long Yufan's sword was cut in half by the broadsword. The large saber broke the sword blade, and the blade also went from top to bottom, splitting open Long Yufan's chest, leaving a large wound. Yufan! The elder of the Long family immediately cried out in pain. Qin Yun, I'll pinch you to death! The teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy also shouted angrily. Everyone was dumbfounded by this saber technique, especially Dao Fan. He never expected Qin Yun to have grasped such an exquisite saber technique. Among the onlookers, there were many disciples of the spirit martial realm from the royal grade courtyard. They all felt that if it was them, they would definitely not be able to withstand this saber strike. Bastard! Long Yufan roared. His chest had been split open, but the power of the Dao core was still there. In order not to be crippled, he fiercely punched at Qin Yun's abdomen. Qin Yun was punched by the martial master, Long Yufan. He was immediately sent flying dozens of meters and fell to the ground. Long Yufan had actually counterattacked. The defending side was not allowed to counterattack. Otherwise, even if they were killed, the saber sword villa would not pursue the matter. Qin Yun looked extremely injured as he lay on the ground, vomiting blood. Long Yufan laughed sinisterly as he leaped over. He landed from the sky and stomped on Qin Yun. Qin Yun, who looked half dead, suddenly rolled and gently leaped up. The saber in his hand overflowed with black lightning. Bang! Bang! Qin Yun quickly slashed out. As he slashed out, lightning surged and released an explosive force, blasting Long Yufan into many pieces. Long Yufan was dead. His body that had been blown to pieces scattered all over the martial field. The elder of the Long family was heartbroken as he roared angrily. The teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy was also stunned as he stared blankly at the dead Long Yufan. Jian Lang was the hall master of the sword hall. He did not wish to see a disciple die, but now, this had happened. Many of the people outside the spirit formation martial field were dumbfounded. In the battle of swords and sabers, death had finally appeared. The one who died was a martial master of the spirit realm. After Qin Yun killed Long Yufan, he went to attack the middle-aged men. His attacks were not any lighter than Tian Ruling and company. One had to know that the 8 disciples of the Heavenly Sword Academy had wanted to cripple them earlier. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Qin Yun and company's attack had ended. None of the disciples of the Heavenly Sword Academy could stand up. Long Yufan was dead and the other middle-aged men were crippled. Their bodies were torn apart and they were on the verge of death. This is the result of wanting to cripple us. Tian Ruling stepped on a middle-aged man's head and said coldly. Jian Lang let out a long sigh and walked towards a distant pillar to close the barrier. Unexpectedly, just as the barrier closed, the Long family's elder suddenly charged at Qin Yun. He held a long sword in his hand as he swiftly stabbed at Qin Yun's eyes. Dao Fan wanted to stop him, but he was stopped by the teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy. Qin Yun, go to hell! The elder of the Long family shouted with a sinister expression. Tian Ruling hurriedly circulated the cold energy in her body and concentrated it on the Long family elder. The sword was about to pierce Qin Yun. However, the Long family elder suddenly stopped. Tian ruling had been sealed in ice. Die! The saber in Qin Yun's hand carried an angry saber aura as it chopped off the Long family elder's arm. Then, it chopped down on the elder's head and beheaded him. Just as Jian Lang arrived, he saw the head rolling on the ground. The Long family elder did not die. He could still live with his head attached. However, Yu Wulan suddenly attacked and destroyed the Long family elder's Dao core. Dao Fan roared and took out a large saber. With a few swift and violent slashes, he severely injured the teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy. "Are you guys alright?" Dao Fan hurriedly rushed towards Qin Yun and company. "I'm fine," Tian ruling said weakly. Yu Wulan hurriedly went over to support her. The people from the medicine hall and the inscription hall were all tongue-tied in shock. The elders of the Hall of Elders looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. The hearts of the disciples of the royal grade courtyard were beating wildly. There was actually a disciple who had killed an elder. This was a big deal. Hall Master Jian, you saw it just now. That elder was the one who attacked first. Qin Yun said. This matter is difficult to decide. We'll have to wait for the Villa Master to return. Jian Lang recalled what had happened just now and knew that Qin Yun had done it to protect himself. Otherwise, he would have been killed. Then can they continue attacking? Dao Fan wiped the blood off his saber and asked indifferently. The teacher of the Heavenly Sword Academy had been crippled by him with just a few slashes. Yes, they won't be able to escape anyway. When the Villa Master returns, he will naturally investigate this matter. Jian Lang also had a headache, so he directly pushed this matter to the Villa Master. In the first round of attacks from the Saber Academy, 2 people had died. One was a disciple of the Long family and the other was an elder of the Long family. This matter quickly spread throughout the entire Saber Sword Villa. The disciples of the Long and Yang families in the Sword Hall were all in a state of panic. They were extremely afraid of encountering the Dao Fan Academy. Although Qin Yun had killed someone, he was not punished because it was excusable. There was still a period of time before the afternoon. It was enough for Tian ruling to rest and recover. Not all the disciples of the Heavenly Sword Academy fought back, so not all of their points were deducted. However, because the disciples could no longer fight, they were disqualified from the Heavenly Sword Academy. Previously, there were several disciples of the Saber Academy who were disqualified because they were crippled. This kind of thing happened from time to time in the Battle of Swords and Sabers. Saber Sword Villa was originally that cruel. It was just as the Hall Master of the Sword Hall had said. In this kind of competition, if one was crippled, one would not be considered a genius, because there was an even more terrifying genius that could replace you. At noon, during the break, everyone in the Saber Sword Villa was discussing the defeat of the Heavenly Sword Academy. As the strongest academy, not only did the Heavenly Sword Academy fail to break through the defense of the Dao Fan Academy, they were even defeated by the Dao Fan Academy. The high-grade Sword Academy that had attacked the Dao Fan Academy before was very worried. Long Wuchen, what will your Long family do next? Jian Meng sat in the courtyard, basking in the sun as he asked Long Wuchen, who was not far away. Long Wuchen was a disciple of the Long family. When he learned that an elder and a martial master of the Long family had died, he secretly felt fear in his heart. Qin Yun, Tian Ruling, Yu Wulan, these 3 fellows will definitely die. Long Wuchen snorted angrily. Our Long family's disciples are in the 5 great immortal sects and the 5 great star sections. Qin Yun and company won't be able to roam free for long. Yang Mutian said coldly, Jian Meng, it's all your fault. If we had attacked the Dao Fan Academy and crippled the 3 of them, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. Exactly. If they were to attack our Talent Sword Academy, we might not be able to defend against them. Long Wuchen also blamed Jian Meng. If I attack the Dao Fan Academy, our Jian family's patriarch will lose his head. Previously, my Jian family issued an order that we must not become enemies with Qin Yun. Otherwise, the Jian family will be in trouble, Jian Meng said. In the afternoon, Long Wuchen and company heaved a sigh of relief when they did not see Qin Yun. Qin Yun and company were going to attack the Azure Thunder Sword Academy. The Azure Thunder Sword Academy was the first to attack the Dao Fan Academy. Chapter 526. Intoxicated Bon Qin Yun only used $1 million to buy the option to attack the Azure Thunder Sword Academy. The 10 people from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy stood in the middle of the martial field. They were not surprised to see Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan arrive. They seemed to have been prepared. They lined up in a row with their arms crossed over their chests. Their faces were calm and they had disdainful sneers on their faces. In the morning, Long Yufan and the Long family's elders were killed by Qin Yun and company. Right now, many sword academies were filled with fear towards this common saber academy that only had 3 people. However, not only were the 10 disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy not afraid, they were actually very confident, as if they could successfully defend. Their mysterious confidence also made many people feel puzzled. Especially in the morning, those who had seen the power of the Common Saber Academy did not believe that the Azure Thunder Sword Academy would be able to defend successfully. It seems that we didn't torture you too much back then. You actually chose us in the afternoon. A middle-aged man from the Azure Thunder Sword Academy said with a sneer. You guys look pretty confident. Tian Ruling was expressionless as she took out her cold cloud saber. The captain of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy laughed. It's not that we're confident, but we never thought that you could win. I admit that you have some ability to defeat the Heavenly Sword Academy, but we are not the Heavenly Sword Academy. This was even more puzzling. This was because the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy all seemed to have a card up their sleeves. One had to know that in the morning, the Heavenly Sword Academy had a martial master of the spirit martial realm, and they still suffered a crushing defeat. Jian Lang opened the barrier and sternly warned, the defenders must not retaliate. If you retaliate, even if you are not killed by the attackers, I will severely punish you. In the morning, because something had happened too suddenly, Jian Lang was unable to react. This time, he didn't want to see anything else happen. Begin. Following Jian Lang's shout, the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy immediately spread out across the martial field. Moreover, these disciples were still dodging everywhere, like headless flies flying around. As a result, if he wanted to attack these people, he would have to spend some time chasing them. Big sister, second sister, how do you think we should deal with this situation? Qin Yun and the 2 girls stood in the middle and frowned slightly as they looked at the people running around. There are 2 ways. One is for me to release the power of frost and seal them in ice. You and Wulan will quickly finish them off. The second is for us to chase after them and kill as many as we can. Tian Ruling gripped her cold cloud saber tightly as she looked at the white-clothed swordsmen running around. The second one. The first method will consume too much of your energy. Qin Yun was worried that there would be an unexpected situation. If Tian Ruling did not have enough strength to deal with it, it would be extremely dangerous. Just like before, when the elders of the Long family suddenly attacked, Tian Ruling reacted quickly. Alright, let's lock onto our targets. Let's go. Tian Ruling had already found her target and quickly flew out. After Qin Yun and Yu Wulan locked onto their targets, they also rushed out. Just as they were about to attack, they realized something was wrong. Qin Yun's expression changed slightly as he felt his body go limp. He quickly looked at Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan and saw that their expressions were somewhat ugly. Poison! Tian Ruling hurriedly shouted, there's a colorless and odorless poison gas here that can make us feel powerless. The saber that Yu Wulan was holding tightly suddenly fell to the ground, and her entire body fell limply to the ground. Tian Ruling's body was relatively strong, so she could still stand. However, the cold cloud saber that weighed over 10,000 pounds had also fallen to the ground. It's really poisonous, Qin Yun shouted as well. It was difficult for him to even speak. Don't talk nonsense. If there's a poisonous gas here, how could we be fine? The middle-aged captain gave a low snort. I think you guys ate something and got poisoned. You must have taken the antidote long ago. Tian Ruling's voice gradually weakened. Right now, only Qin Yun was strong enough. He hurriedly hugged Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan and placed them together. Jian Lang also found it strange. He looked at the people from the medicine hall and said, "Fellow brothers of the medicine hall, go in and check the situation." The barrier immediately closed and the people from the medicine hall hurriedly walked in. Jian Lang and Dao Fan also walked into the martial field. They sniffed the air but did not discover anything. It's the intoxicating bone flower poison. This kind of poison can soften a person's bones. If it is not detoxified in time, the bones will gradually melt. An old man from the medicine hall revealed a shocked expression. How did they get poison like this? Who poisoned them and how did they do it? Dao Fan's face turned gloomy as he looked at the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy. Qin Yun has so many Dao artifacts, everyone has a motive to poison them. Dao Fan, you are with them. It is very likely that you were the one who poisoned them. The teacher of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy said with a sneer. Jian Lang sighed. With such a thing happening, we can only conclude that the Dao Fan Academy has lost. No, let's continue, Qin Yun said resolutely. Qin Yun, if you don't suppress the poison in time, the Dao bones that you have painstakingly cultivated will be greatly affected. The old man from the medicine hall said. It's fine, I can suppress the poison. Qin Yun looked coldly at the 10 disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy and said with a cold voice, I will definitely find out who poisoned us. He looked at Jian Lang and said, Hall Master Jian, open the barrier. Let's continue. Dao Fan asked worriedly, Qin Yun, is this really all right? Elder Fan, don't worry. Qin Yun forced a smile. Everyone hurriedly left the Spirit Formation martial field. Qin Yun quietly released the little jade rabbit and allowed her to hide under his clothes. He began to absorb the poison in his body. The little jade rabbit absorbed the poison very quickly and helped Qin Yun clear the poison in an instant. Big Brother Yun, there are traces of poison gas left in the sky above this barrier. The little jade rabbit sent a voice transmission to Qin Yun. Someone poisoned this place just now. They controlled it very precisely. After you were poisoned, they dispersed the poison gas. When Qin Yun heard that, his expression turned even gloomier. He asked, How long will this poison stay in the body before it causes harm? 1 day later. After a day, the Dao bones will begin to soften. The little jade rabbit said again. All right, I'll have to trouble you. Qin Yun stood up and pretended to check on Tian Ruling's condition. Then, he secretly stuffed the little jade rabbit into her hands and transmitted his voice to her to hide the little jade rabbit so that no one would discover it. Tian Ruling hid the little jade rabbit under her clothes and allowed it to absorb the poison in her body. She felt her poison being sucked away bit by bit and was extremely surprised. Everyone found it strange. What was Qin Yun planning? He was already poisoned to such a serious extent, yet he still continued. Qin Yun, all of you have been poisoned. Why are you still so persistent? A young man sneered and said, You can only blame yourselves for making too many enemies. It's normal for people to take revenge on you in secret. I already know who poisoned us. I will cripple all of them. Qin Yun's eyes suddenly flashed with a ruthless glint. Whoosh! The dragon-resisting boots on his feet exploded with a wave of air and in an instant, he flew in front of the young man. The white-clothed youth did not expect the poisoned Qin Yun to be so fast. Therefore, he was not on guard at all. Qin Yun's saber slashed down with great force and smoothly chopped off the young man's arm. Weren't you poisoned?" The young man immediately screamed. "Even if I'm poisoned, it's more than enough to deal with trash like you." Qin Yun gritted his teeth. His voice was filled with hatred as he punched out and smashed into the young man's abdomen. Boom! Qin Yun's fist carried an incomparably powerful vibrating power. It pierced through the young man's abdomen and shattered the Tao core. The martial spirit and a large amount of energy within the Tao core were instantly scattered, forming a howling gale. "My Tao core! It's gone, my martial spirit has been torn apart." The young man spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground, screaming in grief and despair. Qin Yun fiercely looked at the captain. When the middle-aged captain saw how terrifying Qin Yun's strength was, he was scared out of his wits. Just as he was about to say something, he realized that Qin Yun had already arrived. Furthermore, his saber was slashing down. The middle-aged captain hurriedly brandished his sword to block. Clang! The sword was cut in half and Qin Yun's saber landed on the middle-aged man's shoulder. "Ah! Why do you still have such great strength?" The middle-aged captain was incomparably terrified. "Because evil cannot defeat good." Qin Yun roared angrily as his saber danced wildly. Although it was a very ordinary saber technique, it contained an incomparably powerful force. The saber that he chopped down was fast, ruthless, and flawless. It was hard to block it. "Ah!" The middle-aged captain cried out miserably again. His other shoulder had also been split open. "You want to use poison against me? Trash!" As Qin Yun spoke, his fist produced a roar as it tore through the middle-aged man's abdomen and exited his body. Hoo hoo hoo! The Tao core was broken, and the power inside leaked out like a violent gale. The other 8 disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy were instantly dumbfounded. Just now, they had clearly seen Tian ruling and Yu Wulon paralyzed on the ground. But Qin Yun was completely fine. Just as they were in shock, a cold aura filled with endless killing intent pressed down from the sky. Tian ruling flew over and with a few slashes, she chopped off the hands and feet of the 2 middle-aged swordsmen. The poisoned Tian ruling had actually recovered. "Poison trash, you will be crippled for the rest of your lives." Tian ruling was infuriated to the extreme. The cold cloud saber in her hand released the anger in her heart. Waves of oppressive cold air turned into streams of killing intent. Tian ruling's cold cloud saber howled with a biting cold wind. Wherever it went, blood splattered everywhere. The disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy had their hands and feet cut off by the long and large cold saber. They wriggled on the ground like human sticks. Chapter 527. Rock Paper Scissors. There was still some time left for an incense stick to burn, but the Azure Thunder Sword Academy had lost. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. After the barrier closed, Qin Yun asked an old man from the medicine hall, "Senior, if they had taken the antidote, would it be possible to check their blood?" "Of course. The antidote to the intoxicating bone flower poison must be dissolved in the blood. Furthermore, the antidote's medicinal strength is very strong, so it's very easy to see." As the old man from the medicine hall spoke, he came to the side of a pool of blood and examined it. There were more than 10 onlookers in the medicine hall, including young and middle-aged people. Right now, they were like students, following their teacher to check the blood of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy disciples. The blood on their bodies has traces of taking the antidote, and it's a large dose at that. They had taken a large dose of antidote beforehand, so if they were poisoned, they could quickly detoxify it. The old man from the medicine hall said with a grave expression, "It seems like they were the ones who poisoned it." It was indeed the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy who had poisoned it. It was teacher who ordered us to do it. A middle-aged man cried out. The other disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy, who could still speak, also began to reveal their teacher. They even said that the poison was given by that teacher. The teacher of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy said angrily, "You actually joined forces to frame me. I have painstakingly taught you for so many years in vain." Jian Lang gave the two golden-robed elders a meaningful glance, and the teacher was taken away. "Qin Yun, how did you cure the poison? You can't eat pills during the offensive and defensive battles." An old man from the Yang family walked over and questioned. The people of the Yang family were elders of the Saber Sword Villa and had quite a high status. Their words carried quite a bit of weight. "That's because I have a special spirit artifact that can absorb the poison in my body," Qin Yun replied coldly. "What spirit artifact? Take it out and let's see." The old man from the Yang family extended his hand. "Here you go." Qin Yun took out a black bead and placed it in the old man's palm. The old man from the Yang family took a look and his palm immediately turned black. He was so shocked that he hurriedly threw the bead to the ground. "Qin Yun, are you trying to kill me?" He hurriedly removed the poison from his palm. "You were the one who wanted to see my spirit artifact." Qin Yun picked up the black bead and snorted. "All right. Go back and rest. You still have to continue attacking tomorrow." The Sword Hall Lord also felt very tired, because they had two sword academies that had severely broken the rules during the defensive battle. Although the position of the Hall of Sabers was low, they had never broken the rules when it came to defense. This time, the Sword Hall had lost. Qin Yun and company were also very tired as they hurried back to the Common Saber Academy. After returning, Yu Wulan returned the cute little jade rabbit to Qin Yun. She and Tian Ruling only found it magical, and did not ask any further questions. The inferior grade Common Saber Academy had once again taken down a superior grade Sword Academy. Furthermore, it was done under the condition of being poisoned. For 2 rounds in a row, the Academy had broken the rules. The Azure Thunder Sword Academy had even used poison. This was unexpected for all the disciples of the Saber Sword Villa, because the consequences were extremely serious. Of course, the disciples of the Azure Thunder Sword Academy had also been crippled by Qin Yun. The next morning, Qin Yun used 1,000,000 purple coins to buy the option to attack the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy. The 11 middle-aged men of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy were in the spirit formation martial field of their own academy. When they saw Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan arrive with a murderous aura, their legs immediately went soft. Yesterday, the people from the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy naturally knew about the matter between the Heavenly Sword Academy and the Azure Thunder Sword Academy. At that moment they were filled with regret. They should not have thought about the bounty and instead thought of crippling Qin Yun and company. At the start of the attack, the 11 middle-aged men of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy were all defending with incomparable fear. In the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, the attack stopped. Back then, when the 11 people from the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy attacked the Common Saber Academy, they constantly mocked Qin Yun and company. Furthermore, he was filled with confidence, swearing to cripple Qin Yun and company to obtain the bounty. When the 11 of them attacked, they used extremely vicious attacks to besiege Qin Yun, Tian Ruling and Yu Wulan. Tian Ruling remembered this scene very clearly. "You attacked us. If it was a normal sparring session, then it would have been fine. As for all of you, you are all here for the bounty. You swore to cripple our Dao cores and turn us into cripples. All of you reap what you sow. Now you've finally reaped what you sowed." Tian Ruling's voice was bone-chilling. When everyone saw the disciples of the Sharp Brilliance Sword Academy being crippled, they immediately felt that the Long and Yang families were all evil spirit. If it wasn't for the bounty, they wouldn't have incited so many disciples to deal with Qin Yun and company. Furthermore, during the examination, It was the Yang and Long families who provoked them first. Tian Ruling and Qin Yun had only resisted in order to protect themselves. The disciples of the Yang and Long families were the source of all evil. After taking down 3 high-grade sword academies in a row, the Common Saber Academy had obtained 24 points and was still ranked first. In the afternoon, Yu Wulan, Tian Ruling and Qin Yun followed Dao Fan to the plaza of the Saber Hall. The disciples of the Saber Hall all revealed looks of reverence as they watched the people from the Common Saber Academy walk in. Even the disciples of the high-grade Saber Academy were looking at them with respect. No one would compete with the Common Saber Academy for the right to choose, so Qin Yun could obtain the right to choose for 1,000,000. This time, we will choose the Genius Sword Academy, Qin Yun said. The Genius Sword Academy was an inferior grade academy. Even if they won, they would only get 2 points. With Qin Yun and company's strength, attacking the high-grade Sword Academy would not be a problem at all. They would even be able to obtain 8 points. The Genius Sword Academy had Jian Mang and another disciple of the Jian family. The other 2 were Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian, so they were extremely powerful and were currently ranked second. Although they were ranked second, they were still a few points away from the first Common Saber Academy. Qin Yun, the Genius Sword Academy's Jian Mang is not easy to deal with. Xiong Dao hurriedly said, "Are you sure you want to attack the Genius Sword Academy?" A middle-aged man from the Saber Academy said, "Not only is Jian Mang difficult to deal with, Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian are also very troublesome. It will be difficult for us to break through them. Qin Yun, if you want to attack the Genius Sword Academy, you will need to put in a lot of effort to defeat those 2 sword cultivators." Many people were talking about how terrifying the Genius Sword Academy was. Qin Yun was not surprised. Jian Mang's origin sword was a heaven-defying existence to begin with. It was equivalent to a Xian artifact. "Let's go." Qin Yun had already made his decision. This was what they had discussed last night. Dao Fan walked in front and led his disciples to the Genius Sword Academy. Although the Genius Sword Academy was an inferior grade academy, its environment was not bad. The Spirit Formation Martial Field was also 100 meters wide circular plaza. Jian Mang had his hands behind his back as he stood straight in the middle of the Spirit Formation Martial Field. He was like a sword that revealed its sharpness. The moment Qin Yun entered the Genius Martial Arts Academy, he felt Jian Mang's dense sword intent. Although Jian Mang was blind, his 5 senses were very strong. He immediately knew that Qin Yun had arrived. The sword intent on his body immediately disappeared. Tian Ruling sensed that Jian Mang's sword intent had disappeared and knew that he was expressing his goodwill. Although Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian were expressionless, they were somewhat worried in their hearts. "Yang Mutian, Long Wuchen, long time no see. You look good," Yu Wulan said with a charming smile, but her eyes were filled with killing intent. "The 2 of you have placed a bounty on me. You really think highly of me. Yang Mutian, you knelt down once before. Don't tell me you still haven't learned your lesson?" Tian Ruling took out her cold cloud saber and carried it on her shoulder. She looked very domineering. "Yu Wulan, Tian Ruling, you 2 bitches, don't be arrogant. I guarantee that you will die miserably." Yang Mutian was also infuriated as he gnashed his teeth and said, "They are my big sister and second sister. If you scold them, I will smash your mouth in a moment." Qin Yun said coldly. "Qin Yun, you can only be arrogant in Saber Sword City. If you dare to leave the city, you will definitely die without a burial ground." Long Wuchen said with a sneer, "You have killed 2 more people from our Long family. This has completely offended all the disciples of the Long family." Qin Yun shook his head and sighed. "It was clearly your Long family who caused the trouble first. If it wasn't for the fact that you guys were arrogant and unreasonable and wanted to steal our things, how could this have happened?" Tian Ruling sneered. The disciples of the Long family were originally a group of bandits. Relying on the powerful family behind them, they burned, killed, and plundered everywhere, doing many heartless things. Your Long and Yang families are used to being arrogant. Now that someone is rebelling, you guys can't take it anymore? Yu Wulan sneered. Don't worry, this kind of resistance will continue until your clan is exterminated. Many martial artists knew very well what kind of character the Long and Yang families had in the Spirit Desolate Land. However, they usually only dared to be angry but did not dare to say anything. After all, these two families had disciples in the 5 great star sects and the 5 great immortal sects. They were not to be trifled with. Let's begin. Jian Lang only hoped that there wouldn't be any problems with this attack. The barrier was opened. There were a total of 9 disciples in the Genius Sword Academy. After they began, they dispersed one after another. This was also the defensive method of many sword academies, each taking care of themselves. Our targets are only Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian, but there are 3 of us. What should we do? Yu Wulan smiled tenderly and said, Xiao Yun, I don't want to give second sister to you. I want to make a move too. I want to teach them a lesson too. Tian Ruling also said. What should we do? I want to fight too. Qin Yun frowned. Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian immediately flew into a rage. They had never been looked down upon like this before. The onlookers didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The 3 people from the Common Saber Academy were actually fighting to deal with Long Wuchen and Yang Mutian. He made it sound as if anyone could easily kill these 2 people. Let's play rock, paper, scissors. The one who wins first gets to choose. Qin Yun said. All right. Yu Wulan hurriedly nodded. Rock, paper, scissors. Tian Ruling shouted coldly. Tian Ruling used scissors while Qin Yun and Yu Wulan used paper. I'll win first, I want to hit Long Wuchen, Tian Ruling said happily. Following that, it was time for Qin Yun and Yu Wulan to play rock, paper, scissors. Qin Yun's rock won against Yu Wulan's scissors. Yang Mutian is mine, Qin Yun said with a chuckle. Humph. Yu Wulan looked unhappy as she pouted. The most unhappy ones were Yang Mutian and Long Wuchen. In order to deal with them, Qin Yun and the 2 women had actually used rock, paper, scissors. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.